I don't have voice.
We can hear you, Craig.
Hello?
We mute
Yes,
Craig.
Lionel. What can I do for you?
Well, it's very subjective, and I mean, it's really hard to.
Mr. Henson, can you do us a favor and go ahead and mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, we're right at 4 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and check with Safarina or actually, Kate, can you tell us if we have a quorum at this point?
Chair, I need to check in here with Safarina just to verify, please.
Sure.
I'm actually looking to see if Commissioner Craig Stevens has been able to log in. He was having some trouble a little earlier.
He was on for a
Stevens?
moment.
And
Commissioner Stevens? Let's see here. We have
Okay, by my count, I think all the seats are represented. So let's go ahead and call to order here at 4:01. I'm going to ask for a roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Alejo is an excused absence. Commissioner Rutascu?
Here.
Commissioner Craig is, for the record, will be joining the meeting a little bit later. Commissioner Gurley? Commissioner Gurley?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Oglesby?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Poitras?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Snodgrass?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens? Who was here? Commissioner Stevens?
I saw him a minute ago, I believe.
I did too. And then Commissioner Velasquez?
here.
Vice Chair Leffel?
Here.
And Chair Lopez?
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Safarina. With that, I'm going to see if perhaps Director Poitras wouldn't mind leading us in the pledges.
Be happy to, Mr. Chair. I pledge allegiance to.
To the
We got
flag.
everybody do it? I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Of the United States.
America. And to
Over there, I can't tell.
We could see you.
Okay. Ready? We'll try again. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands,
stands
Volume.
One nation.
one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice for all.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Let's see, I heard Greg. Greg, your audio is on. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. At this point, let the record reflect that Commissioner Stevens has joined us as well. We are at the point in our agenda where we're going to conduct a little special business, which has to do with AB 361 and the ability to continue meeting remotely. So at this point, I'm going to see if there's any staff comments before we take up this item, which we've taken up in the past.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. In agenda item number 1, we do have a draft resolution that would enable the commission to continue to remotely meet for the next 30 days. We are recommending consideration and approval of those findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Just to interject, I'm sorry, Chair. We don't actually have a draft resolution before the commission. It's just that you make those findings, and those findings are laid out clearly in the executive officer's report.
All right, then we're going to go ahead and open this up for any public comment on our item 1, which is in reference to AB 361. We ask that folks use the raise hand function. It's either at the bottom of your screen or in your reactions tab, depending on your version of Zoom. *9 via landline or cell phone will raise your hand in order to allow us to recognize you. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close the public comment portion of the item 1 and bring it back to the commission. Is there a motion to approve item 1?
So moved.
Oglesby
Second.
Okay, I'll take the motion from Mary Ann Leffel, the second from Supervisor Askew, and go ahead and ask for a roll call vote. Safarina?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with Commissioner Rudiscu,
Aye.
Commissioner Gurley. Commissioner Gurley,
Aye.
Commissioner Oglesby,
Aye.
Commissioner Poitras,
Yes.
Commissioner Snodgrass.
I don't have a vote on this
Oh,
afternoon.
that's right. I'm so sorry. And then we have Commissioner Velasquez, who is going to be voting for Commissioner Craig until she joins the meeting a little later. Commissioner Velasquez,
Here. Aye.
thank you. Vice Chair Leffel
Yes.
and Chair Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all. With that, we are going to recess to close session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. The commission will confer with legal counsel regarding one matter of significant exposure to litigation. I want to check with counsel, see if there's anything additional to share before we open up for public comment on this closed session item.
No, thank you, Chair. You covered it.
Thank you. All right, at this point, is there any public comment on our closed session items? We ask folks to go ahead and use the same function of raise hand to be recognized. Seeing no hands, we'll close public comment for our closed session, recess to closed session, and we will be doing that by breakout room. So we will reconvene here as soon as we're able to complete that. Thank you, everybody.
And the children say, laugh and play just the same as you and Frost is a snowman, knew the sun was hot that day. So he said, let's run.
I don't hear anything. Can't hear.
Supervisor Lopez, he can still hear you. I don't know if you know you're on the live line, public line.
Hello.
Is that you, Supervisor?
No, I'm just checking to see if I'm able to listen to the meeting.
Is that very well?
Yeah, I'm trying to listen to the meeting. What's happening?
Oh, I haven't, I'm not picking anything up on my landline.
They're in closed session. They'll return shortly, we think.
Has the meeting started? I
don't think
understood.
I think they're in closed session.
Closed session.
Closed session, yeah, that's maybe why we're not picking anything up.
Oh, well, I thought
Yes,
this
that
was
is
an open meeting.
It
where we could
is,
make
but they leave to go into closed session periodically. They'll be
Oh.
back.
Yeah,
Okay,
we just
all right.
have
I
to-
just
just
call
have to
back
hang
then.
on. Yeah, it doesn't seem like anything's happening, but it is apparently.
Just stay on the line. They'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Okay, it's okay. All right, it's tell. Wow. Okay, well I see Paul Bruno.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, I just.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello?
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 Okay, well, I finally signed in. I couldn't get the Zoom going.
I have no idea what's happening.
Oh, well, have we missed the meeting? It started at 4? Is it over?
No,
They said they're in
it's a
closed session.
They're still in closed
Closed
session,
session.
you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Closed session.
this is the really, really long closed session where we're all just supposed to go away.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, I see. I see. So let's not go anywhere. Or
Got
at least
it.
complain
No,
about it. How long have you guys been? you've been
Now,
waiting
who's
since 4 o'clock?
managing the meeting, though? Who's doing the technical stuff?
It's the same guy that was at the last meeting who was applauded for limiting public comment to 2 minutes. Now he's limited public comment to 1 minute, and that hasn't started yet.
I guess you call them the usual suspects.
Because essentially what they can do is, have people stuck in
a silent chat room and conduct business elsewhere. I mean, that is possible with Zoom technology. And I was just wondering if that's what's being done.
Is Chris online here, or is he elsewhere? Chris Locke?
No, this is Don Hogue.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, because he would be the one getting the emails from. He would know, right?
Okay.
So where we're at with this.
Can you hear me?
Is there any way to reach him? Does anybody have a
Can you hear
phone
me?
number we can text him?
Why do we have to listen to your conversation?
Can you hear me?
What?
This
Yeah,
is
I can hear
totally
you.
normal. This is a totally normal procedure in a meeting to have a closed session. You can
Okay.
Yeah, but
come back in a
it's
half
more
an
than a
hour.
half an hour.
We do it all the time at the Water
Okay.
Management District. They do it at Lafco. Maybe they're talking about legal things, but it's completely normal. So you just have to be patient.
Well, it's not transparent, and that's not normal.
Well, it is
Okay.
on their, it is on their agenda. So it's transparent.
And
It's
they
in the
always,
agenda.
and they always, public officials always need closed meetings where they can discuss things before they're ready to present them to the public. And if we were meeting off Zoom, if we were meeting in person in a big meeting room, they would go to a separate physical space.
Exactly.
So this is the fact that they've gone to a breakout Zoom room is no different from going to a separate physical meeting room.
Well, it just seems a little shady.
This is not a conspiracy, folks.
I thought they'd already decided what they were going to say.
We have no idea what they're discussing in their closed session. It could be something way down the pike.
Okay, I thought they were. They'd already made it a decision.
It's most likely they're discussing the legal issues that they're going to face in 18 and item 14. So everybody should probably just mute themselves. We don't need to carry this discussion on further. The clerks will let us know when they start the meeting again.
Thank you.
Normal.
Okay. So I have a screen that says tap to speak. So I thought I was already muted.
Henry, I don't think anybody's at the meeting. I don't hear anything.
They are in closed session. Hang in there. And there are 3 phones that are not muted.
Okay, how do you mute it, by leaving?
You hit your mute button.
There's no mute button, I'm on Zoom.
Does anybody know if Lafco has a Twitter handle?
In the lower left corner of the Zoom, roll your cursor over the top of it and it will say mute, and then you click it and it will unmute or mute.
Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting as members rejoin here. I'm going to ask everybody in the public to keep your microphones muted. Okay. All right, Safarino, we're coming back from closed session. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask that with this reconvening, we get a roll call. You're muted, Safarino.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. Okay. Commissioner Rutascu.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig.
Here.
And for note for the record, Commissioner Craig joined the meeting while in closed session at 4:21 p.m. Commissioner Gurley. Commissioner Gurley.
It looks like he stepped away from his desk for the moment.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Poitras.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Snodgrass.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Velasquez.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Leffel.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Lopez.
I'm here, and I see Matt Gorley has joined us as well.
Thank you.
So we'll note that for the record. All right. At this point on our agenda, we have general public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on today's agenda, but within the purview of Lafco. So we'll ask folks to use the raise hand function in order to be recognized. Again, this is general public comment regarding items not on today's agenda. Seeing no hands going up, we will close the public comment, the general public comment portion of the agenda, and head to our consent agenda, which is consisted of items 3 through 9. Is there any member of the commission who wishes to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening? See no hands, I'll turn to the public and see if anybody in the public wishes to pull an item from our consent agenda this evening. We ask that you use the raise hand function to be recognized. Seeing no hands going up, we will close.
Move approval, Craig.
All right.
Lafco.
Well, they move quickly. With that, we will go ahead and ask for a roll call vote. Safarino?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Rutascu.
Aye.
Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Craig.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Gurley.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Poitras.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Leffel.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Lopez.
Yes, the motion carries. I did see a question in the chat as to where the raised hand function is. It lives in the reactions tab for most desktop versions of Zoom at the bottom of your screen for some mobile. And again, *9 via landline or cell phone will give you that ability. Mr. Bayer, I'm going to go ahead because we did miss your hand there, to give you the opportunity to share a 1-minute comment with us at this point, or ask to have an item pulled for review.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. I'm just curious, can a person give a minute to another person when we get to a later comment? If they're in the meeting and they're present in the meeting, can they give a minute to another person?
No, not this evening. Normally, if somebody asks ahead of time, I'll let a group put together time to do that, but I'm not going to do it on the fly this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we have moved our consent agenda and we'll move into our new business items that begin with item 10. Consider the annual audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. For that, I'm going to kick it over to our Executive Director, Kate McKenna.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. Members of the commission, In agenda item number 10, you will see a draft audit report for the fiscal year that ended June 30, 2021. This report was considered in draft form by your Budget and Finance Committee in November. And I do have tonight with us Ms. Karen Campbell, CPA and Senior Audit Manager for Bianchi, Casavan and Pope. Ms. Campbell's firm prepared this audit, discussed it with the Budget and Finance Committee, and is now prepared to provide a short presentation to our commission. Thank you, Karen.
It's a very active investigation. Police say there will be.
Getting a lot of back. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Kate, Chair Lopez, and members of the commission. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today to present the June 30, 2020 audited financial statements for Lafco. As Kate mentioned, this is item 10 in your agenda packet. There are 2 items in that packet. One of them is a 3-page letter that's known as the auditor's communication letter. It's followed by the full audited financial statements. And I know you have a very full agenda here today, so I just would like to share a few brief comments regarding these 2 items and then respond to questions. I'm going to flip the order that's in your agenda. I think the 3-page letter came first and then the full audit report follows that. But as Kate mentioned, members of the Budget and Finance Committee and I met with Kate and Mike Briley earlier last month and reviewed that report in depth. So the package before you is for your consideration, and it's a result of that discussion in that meeting. A couple of notes that I'd like to call out to you that I wanted to mention that our audit opinion, which is found on pages 1, 2, and 3 of the report, is labeled as an unmodified or clean opinion. Also worthy of noting is that there were no instances of non-compliance identified in our reporting on pages 44 and 45 in the packet. Back to the short 3-page letter, the auditor communications letter, I did want to remind this group that this is a customary and required letter issued by all auditors, and it serves as a tool to communicate certain key items to those charged with governance. I'd like to share that there were no audit adjustments this year, no disagreements with management. The audit was completed in a timely manner, and management personnel were knowledgeable and helpful. Overall, it was a very smooth and clean audit. At this time, I'd like to entertain any questions.
Questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public. Any questions from the public regarding this audit? Please use the raise hand function. I see a hand up from, well, that's a commissioner. We'll bring it back in a second. Seeing no public hands, I'm going to close the public comment portion and bring it back. I see a hand up from Commissioner Snodgrass. Commissioner Snodgrass, floor is yours.
So just as a point of question on the audit, on page 11, the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, this is in regard to the forward dissolution. And it says we have $147,000 in legal fees. I think that description probably should be legal fees and settlement costs, not just legal fees. I don't think we expended $147,000 in legal fees.
Thank you for sharing that. We'd be happy to make that change with the Budget and Finance Committee's agreement.
We would agree.
Agreed. Okay. Then seeing no additional hands up at this point, the question before us is to receive public comments and then provide questions or follow-up discussion and then adopt. So we're at the portion of adoption. Is there a motion from the commission?
So moved.
Second.
I got, okay, thank you, Pete. So we got the motion from Mary Ann, second from Pete. Can we get a roll call vote on that, please, Safarina?
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with Commissioner Rutescu.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig.
Aye.
Commissioner Gurley.
Aye.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Commissioner Portress.
Yes.
Thank you. And then I have Vice Chair Leffel.
Yes.
Thank you. And Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Thank
That brings us, thank you, Safarina. That brings us to item 11. Consider the year-end financial statements for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Before we go, Karen, I want to say thank you. It's been a lot of work. I know that. Sorry, didn't mean to rush you off, but we appreciate all the work you put in to help us get a clean audit again.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. The financial statements in section 11 of the meeting packet are dated June 30th, 2021. So just a little bit of background. These statements are what's presented to your auditor for them to conduct their audit report on. So Karen just reported all of the work that she did. You received an unmodified opinion. And from my perspective, Chair, there isn't much else to report on section 12. These are just the internal financial statements for the same period of time that was just covered in the audit report. Unless Kay or anyone in the finance committee has any other comments, then I don't have anything else to report on section 12 or section 11 rather, excuse me.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we'll go to the public and ask folks to use the raise hand function, see if there's any comments or questions on item 11 this evening. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close the public comment on item 11 and bring it back to the commission for adoption. Is there
I
a
would
motion?
move approval.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Second.
Got a second from Ian. Can we go ahead and get a roll call vote on that, please, Safarina?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Rutascu.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Craig. We'll come back to her. Let's see, Commissioner Gurley.
Aye.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Commissioner Portress. Commissioner Portress. Okay, we'll come back to him. Commissioner Craig.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Portress.
Commissioner Poitras, I believe you're on mute.
Commissioner Portress.
Let's go ahead and proceed, Safarina.
All right. Vice Chair Leffel
Yes.
and Chair Lopez.
Yes, the motion carries. And Pete, did you want to?
Yeah,
Did you
sorry,
want to put in your position?
Yeah. Yes, please.
You want to re-ask the question, Safarina?
Commissioner Portress.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. Now we're on to item 12. Consider for approval the quarterly financial statements for the period ending September 30th, 2021. That's back to Mr. Briley.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. These are the financials, the internal financial statements rather for Lafco for the first quarter of this fiscal year. So this is for the months July, August, and September. And page 2 of those financial statements is a snapshot of the assets and liabilities, equity, fund balance, and so forth of the commission for as of September 30th, 2021. And page 3 is a picture of the revenues and expenses for the first 3 months of the year. We went over this in detail with the Budget and Finance Committee, and I think everybody was satisfied with the report, so I don't have anything else to add to that, unless, again, anyone on Kate or anyone on the Finance Committee wants to add anything.
Nothing, thank you.
All right, hearing none. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Any questions or comments from the public? Again, we ask that you use the raise hand function or *9 via landline or cell phone to be recognized. See no hands going up, we'll close public comment and bring it back. Is there a motion to approve the adopt the financial statements?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Poitras.
Second from Pete. Can we go ahead and get a roll call vote on that, please, Safarina?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Rutascu.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Craig,
Aye.
Commissioner Gurley,
Aye.
Commissioner Oglesby,
Aye.
Commissioner Poitras.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Leffel
Yes.
and Chair Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for always keeping us on the up and up with the financials. We appreciate your diligence. You always make these things easy.
You're welcome, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're on into item 13. To kick us off for this item, I'm going to send it over to our Executive Officer, Kate McKenna.
All right, thank you, Chair Lopez. Tonight in agenda item number 13, we are requesting your consideration and approval of a draft study that has been prepared by your staff. And the report and presentation concerning the study will be presented tonight by our principal analyst, Darren McBain.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is a broad overall review of the Water Management District's services and sphere of influence, prepared by staff in accordance with state law, the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, which requires Lafcos to periodically review the services and boundaries of all cities and special districts. The study's main sections are just listed here on the screen, starting with district boundaries and sphere of influence and moving through services and facilities. There's discussion about the proposed activation of latent powers related to retail potable water services. The study also looks at population and growth, district governance, finances, and future challenges and opportunities. It concludes on page 35 with some written determinations as required by state law. Essentially, those determinations find that this is a capable, stable, well-run district, and that the existing sphere of influence and the proposed 139-acre expansion are appropriate to the district being able to carry out its legislative purposes. Just a few notes here about process. We posted this draft study on our website back in October, on the 13th of October, for the October 25th public meeting. At that time, we also published or actually before that, we published a hearing notice and provided notification to all known interested parties. As you know, on October 25th, the commission continued the public hearing to December 6th in order to allow for robust review of the large volume of correspondence that we received on related item 14 on today's agenda, the district's proposal. And on December 1st, we reposted the draft study with just some very minor updates that were listed in the staff report for this item, and we re-notified interested parties. So that's it for my remarks here. Unless there was anything that Kate or anybody else on the team would like to add, I would give it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Darren. Any additional comments, Kate?
We are recommending tonight approval of the resolution attached as attachment 1 to our staff report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from commissioners? All right, see no hands going up. We'll take it to the public and see if there's any public input on this item. Please keep the comments focused to this particular item at this point. Each speaker will have 60 seconds. And again, I ask you to keep the comments focused on item 13 and not 14. I see one hand up from Sarcy Folsom. Sarcy, we'll go ahead and you should have the ability to unmute yourself. You've got 60 seconds to share a comment with this board. Commission, my apologies. Sarcy?
Hi, I'm sorry. Is this referring to the commission's? I missed part of this.
This is referring to item 13, consideration of the municipal service review and sphere of influence study for MPWMD.
No, I have no comment on this. I need to wait for item 14. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to an email 58, Eugenia 58. You now have the ability to unmute yourself. You have 60 seconds to share your comment relevant to the MSR with this commission at this point.
My name is Sylvia Shi from Seaside, and I please approve the application from the Water District and please follow the recommendation from your staff. Because the KOM.
I'm sorry, that's not this item. We're going to go
Oh,
ahead
I'm
and we'll
sorry.
come back.
I will
Thank
wait.
you so much.
Thank you.
We'll
you.
keep going again. We're asking folks with comments on item 13 at this point. Item 13, I'm going to go to Patricia Fay Majera. Patricia, the floor is now yours. You have 60 seconds to share your comments with this commission relevant to item 13. Patricia, you'll need to unmute yourself from your end.
I have no comment on 13. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Rick Hewer, we'll go ahead and give you the floor. Again, relevant to item 13, please.
Absolutely. The staff made the comment that one of the findings that Monterey Peninsula Water Management District was a well-run and so forth district. I would not necessarily agree with that. We are in court trying to get them to live up to their own ordinances as it relates to collection of fees. And it's, to me, a well-run organization follows its own ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. See no additional hands. I'm going to close public comment at this point on item 13 and bring it back to the commission. Are there any additional questions or is there a motion from the commission on item 13?
Chair Oglesby moves approval.
Got a motion?
I'll second that, Askew.
Got a motion and a second. Any additional comments or questions? I see a hand up from Peter Montier, but Peter, we already closed public comment. Thank you so much. At this point, we're going to go ahead and ask Safarina for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Rutescu.
Aye.
Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Craig. I'll move on. Commissioner Gurley.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Commissioner Poitras. Commissioner Poitras.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Leffel. Vice Chair Leffel.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. And Chair Lopez.
Yes.
And
thank you.
Circling back to Commissioner Craig.
I apologize. My screen keeps freezing up on me.
That's okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being diligent with your mute. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap item 13 and head into item 14. We're going to receive a report from our staff and we'll start with that. Kate, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair Lopez, members of the commission. We're going to put a few slides up on the screen for us. And tonight our commission is conducting a public hearing on a proposal by the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. This proposal was submitted to Lafco of Monterey County in February of 2021. It was deemed complete by my office at the end of July this past summer and was duly scheduled for a public hearing in October. That hearing was continued to today's meeting, and it consists, the proposal from the district consists of two parts of it. Jonathan, if you could please. The proposals that you see here are driven and mandated by the voter approved Measure J. The first proposal is activation of a latent powers to provide potable water production and distribution services for retail customers. The second requested action from the district is approval of a very minor sphere of influence amendment in district annexation that would bring about 140 acres into the district's jurisdictional boundary. And our next slide shows you a representation of where that boundary cleanup action is. It's the two small areas, one being Hidden Hills and one being in the Yankee Point area. Next slide, please. Jonathan Brinkman, our senior analyst, is going to take a moment here to provide an overview for the commission and members of the public of all of the materials that have been submitted and that are part of the consideration process today. And he will also provide some brief background concerning the application. Jonathan?
Thank you, Executive Officer McKenna, Chair Lopez, and members of the commission. I'm just going to do a quick summary of the components of our Executive Officer's report for December 6th. There were 7 attachments to this report. The first attachment is a draft resolution. First, a clean version, and behind that is a red line version for conditional approval of the activation of latent powers for the district. The attachment number 2 is a revised draft resolution, includes clean and red line versions in the attachment, and is for conditional approval of the proposed 139 acre sphere amendment and annexation. Attachment 3 is a 1-page attachment that provides a link to last month's October 25th item 9 for the commission packet, which that included a number of attachments, including the Berkson Associates report from October 11th, a draft resolution on the conditional approval for the activation of latent powers, a draft resolution on conditional approval of the 139 acre sphere amendment and annexation, hyperlinks to the district's certified environmental impact report, correspondence, written comments received through October 13th, 2021, and then the district's proposal and related background materials, which was also provided to commissioners through USB drives as well. Also, attachment 4 to the December 6th board report includes correspondence received from October 13th through October 25th. Also includes attachment 5, correspondence received by Lafco from October 25th, 26th through November 30th. Attachment 6 is the Berkson Associates supplemental memorandum dated November 22nd, and the original Berkson report dated October 11th. And then attachment 7 is the Lafco staff prepared summary points from Callahan Council's October 19th, 2021 letter with index responses from the district in their letters in November 15th and 17th, and also the November 22nd Berkson Associates memorandum. And then since the posting of the packet, we've provided 2 supplemental memos, one dated Friday, December 3rd, and the other dated today's date, Monday, December 6th. And that transmitted correspondence received from December 1st through December 6th. We cut the deadline off on that as of noon today. Then just going a little bit into background, prior to Lafco's process, there was Measure J, which was approved, which was a voter approved measure and established a new Monterey Peninsula Water Management District policy to pursue public ownership by the District of Callahan's Monterey main water system if it was found financially feasible. The district's financial feasibility evaluation occurred in 2019, which included the Raftelis report, and it found that the district ownership to be feasible. Then just further background about Lafco's process. The district filed its application with Lafco on February 27th, 2021. It also filed its amended application May 3rd, 2021. And then in April 26th and June 26th, the commission held information study sessions at these regular Lafco meetings. July 22nd, Lafco engaged Berkson Associates to prepare an independent financial review of the district's proposal. On July 30th, as mentioned by Executive Officer Kate McKenna, Lafco determined the district's application to be complete. And then October 25th was Lafco's public hearing to consider the proposal, which has been continued to today's date. And that was to allow for review of a large volume of correspondence received after the October 25th packet was posted on October 13th. With that, I will turn it back to Executive Officer Kate McKenna.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. We wanted to briefly outline for our commission and members of the public what Lafco's role is in this process. First of all, under the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, which is a component of the California Government Code, there is a requirement that a special district, such as the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, must obtain Lafco approval before exercising latent powers or before a district annexes territory into its boundaries. If approved by Lafco, ultimately the district's legislative body will have some decisions to make about deciding whether or not to proceed with potential acquisition of CalAm's main water system. And we've outlined through these bullets here on this slide some of the elements of that process, some of the options available. The acquisition could either occur by a negotiated purchase or through an eminent domain proceeding. Such a process could most likely take several years, and the outcome is uncertain, but the district does have various opportunities throughout that process to either continue or to decline to continue in that process. Next slide, please. We've outlined here some of the main overview of the main Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg criteria and local policy considerations that Lafco must weigh in evaluating this application. We must be able to find that the proposal is consistent with these provisions of the California Government Code and with our locally adopted policies and procedures, and reference to that consistency determination must be made in the draft resolutions that are provided for your potential action. And those resolutions are attached to the staff report. Next slide, please. During the course of your staff's analysis, we did identify some key issues, and I would like to focus on three central issues here. First one, concerning the financial feasibility of the district acquiring and providing public ownership of the water system. The issue of whether district acquisition and ongoing ownership of the system is financially feasible is really the central question at the core of Lafco's decision-making role tonight. The district's Lafco application included a detailed preliminary valuation study. It also included a cost of service analysis in the Raftellus report, along with an operations plan. These items provide a body of evidence that district acquisition and ownership of the system is feasible in staff's opinion. Lafco has an independent financial consultant, Berkson Associates, who has reviewed this public record and has concluded that the Raftellus report on file continues to be a sufficient basis for a commission decision on the proposal. Mr. Richard Bergson is here tonight on this Zoom meeting and will give a presentation that describes his findings in more detail. The second issue that we examined very closely is a potential loss of annual property tax revenues to some of our local agencies here in Monterey County. Based on current data and projection, public or tax exempt ownership of CalAm's main water system would decrease property tax revenue to local agencies, including school districts, by about roughly $1.7 million per year. The district brought in a specialized property tax consultant this summer to address this issue in detail as part of the Lafco process. One of the recommended conditions of approval, condition C, would require the district to negotiate dispute resolution agreements with each of the 14 local agencies whose revenue would potentially go down by more than $5,000 a year to mitigate those losses for approximately 5 to 7 years. The third main issue that we addressed in our analysis is the potential for added costs for county residents outside of the district's territory. In accordance with Measure J, the Water Management District is seeking to acquire CalAm's Monterey main water system. This would leave several satellite water systems and wastewater systems remaining under CalAm ownership. And specifically, we're talking about 5 smaller water systems and 8 wastewater systems. Separating these systems off from the main Monterey system will reduce current economies of scale and could result in increased costs to serve those smaller systems. CalAm's rates are determined by the California Public Utility Commission, generally about every 3 to 4 years. And the rates are based on CalAm's costs of providing service. How large the future increases may be, possibly 5 to 7 years in the future or more, cannot be determined now with any certainty. However, the California Public Utility Commission's regulatory process does provide a level of protection to ratepayers, which includes an independent public advocate's office that strives to achieve the lowest rates consistent with safety, reliability, and the state's environmental goals. Richard Bergson's November 11th memorandum to Lafco noted that the CPUC currently limits rate increases to the systems serving Chular in the Salinas Valley, a low-income disadvantaged community, and therefore the MPWMD proposal would not affect Chular ratepayers unless the rate limitation were changed by the CPUC. His November 11th memo also identified several possible ways of mitigating future rate increases to all of the satellite systems. In summary, regarding these 3 main issues outlined above, the draft resolutions that are before the Commission today do contain additional language that staff has added since the initial hearing on October 25th. And the purpose of that additional language is to further address these subjects in the recommended determinations. The identified issues illustrate that some uncertainties exist about the future effects of this proposal. However, those uncertainties do not, in our opinion, rise to the level of precluding a conditional approval action. Next slide, please. We have identified on this slide and the next slide all of the key recommended conditions of approval. I'll just briefly walk our commission through them. First of all is this very standard condition that would require the Water Management District to complete its payments to Lafco for the staff and legal processing costs. We have added a condition noted as B here that would require the Water Management District to eventually come back to Lafco and request that the proposed new powers be divested, that is taken back, if for any reason acquisition of the water system does not occur. A third recommended condition would require the Water Management District to enter into agreements to mitigate financial impacts to those local agencies that would be most affected by a reduction in property tax revenues. Next slide, please. The next two recommended conditions pertain to boundary matters between the Water Management District and Marina Coast Water District to ensure that there is not a duplication of service and that there's cooperation with respect to future boundary decisions. And finally, we have proposed a condition that would require the Water Management District to defend and indemnify any litigation action that is brought against Lafco with respect to approval of the district's proposal. Next slide, please. The district's application and the supporting materials do provide a body of substantial evidence that meets the criteria for approval as conditioned. We recognize that there are risks and uncertainties ahead for the district, but appropriate conditions of approval have been included to help mitigate those risks and uncertainties. The conditional approval that we have recommended will place the overall Measure J public water ownership effort back into the hands of the district's board of directors. The district's board will retain its discretion as a public agency to proceed with the effort of acquiring CalAm's Monterey main water system. But the district will also have several opportunities to halt its acquisition process in the future if the effort were to appear no longer feasible or in the interests of district residents. And with that, I would like to also highlight and recognize some key staff and consultants that have worked very hard to prepare this public hearing item for consideration. I would like to thank our team of analysts, that is Principal Analyst Darren McBain, our Senior Analyst Jonathan Brinkman, our Interim Clerk to the Commission, Office Administrator Safarina Maluki, as well as our General Counsel Kelly Donlin, Special Counsel Paula D'Souza, and certainly our financial consultant, Mr. Richard Berkson. Our last slide that we'd like to present as part of this staff overview is an outline of the next steps in the process. That will be, I'll turn it over to Jonathan to do that. And then we will request a presentation from Mr. Berkson. So thank you very much.
So Commissioners and Chair Lopez, this is Jonathan Brinkman. Just to wrap up on the final slide here, these will be the next steps in the LAFCO process. So there's a reconsideration period. It's a 30-day period required by state law, and that would follow the Commission's adoption of an approval resolution. Any written reconsideration requests must present new or different facts that could not have been previously presented. Then the next step after that is the conducting authority proceedings. And that's also required by state law if the proposal is approved, and it would be set for Monday, January 24th at 4 p.m. if the commission approves the proposal today. And then after the conducting authority proceedings, there's a certificate of completion for the proposal. And that is the step that finalizes LAFCO's process. It's filed with the county recorder once all the conditions of approval have been satisfied in the resolutions. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation. We will turn this over to Richard Berkson. And Richard, please let me know if you want me to present your presentation or if you'll be doing that yourself.
No, I'd be happy to present it, and I just need permission to share my screen. Okay, I think I've got it here. One moment, please. Okay, good evening, commissioners and Chair Lopez. I'm pleased to be here this evening. Again, my name is Richard Berkson. I'm principal with Berkson Associates, and I've been asked by LAFCO to review the financial feasibility documents prepared by the district and their consultants, as well as related documents and comments that have been received on those items. Going straight into a summary of my findings, and you'll find much more detail in my October 11th report and also the follow-up November 22nd memorandum. So I'll just touch on the highlights here. Backing up one. Fundamental conclusion, as Kate mentioned, is that the Raftellus report regarding cost of service and financial feasibility, in my view, provides a reasonable basis for a LAFCO determination that the district's proposal will have sufficient revenues. The report is thorough, rigorous, well documented. Berkson Associates concurs with the report's findings, and we believe that there is a likelihood of sufficient revenues to provide water, and that future rates will be less than future CalAm rates. That being said, I know I'm repeating this, there are a lot of uncertainties. This is really just the first step in a long process, and there are uncertainties and questions that have been raised about operating costs, capital investments, the desal plant, and most importantly, the acquisition costs for the system. Given that, there may be differences that arise relative to the current Raftellus report, although I don't believe that they're likely to significantly change the feasibility conclusions, changed assumptions, with the exception of the acquisition costs, generally affect all scenarios. So it's likely that the conclusions will remain intact, and the differences between the scenarios will remain, although the magnitude may vary slightly. I mentioned that future district water rates could be less than future CalAm rates, and this is based on the analysis prepared by the district, which I did review and which I am in agreement with. And here's an example of a projected monthly water bill, which could increase from $93 to $125 per month. That's the forecast for a district scenario, compared to a somewhat higher increase under a Cal-Am scenario. Other rates to public nonprofit entities, government agencies, commercial, industrial, institutional are also likely to be less under this district scenario. I mentioned there are many uncertainties. It's a long process. The eminent domain process is likely and will resolve many of those uncertainties. During that process, the district proposes to adopt contingent rates, so that will help pin down those rates. That requires that the district update its rate and cost analysis prior to and as part of the right to take trial, which is really the first trial of two. If the district moves past successfully through that right to take trial, then it enters the valuation phase. And at that point, the major unknown, the acquisition cost of the system, will be determined. And that cost, I'll talk a bit more about that, again, is very important to the extent that the acquisition costs and related charges are greater than what's shown in the Raft-Tellis report. That will reduce feasibility and narrow the difference between the projected rates. I've reviewed as I said, reviewed the Raft-Tellis analysis, and they've estimated that acquisition of the system would cost approximately $574 million, which includes finance costs and other acquisition costs. There are competing estimates by Cal-Am based on an appraisal that they commissioned a few years ago, which estimated a much higher cost. Based on information in the Raft-Tellis report, I believe that the district potentially could pay more for the acquisition of the system before rates under their ownership are essentially equal to Cal-Am's future rates. And that total cost was approximately $780 million. Again, that's based on a number of assumptions and a discount rate, which you might think of as a cost of financing. The Raft-Tellis report does look at a range of potential discount rates and interest rates, which over the next several years could well increase. At a 6% discount rate, the quote unquote break even acquisition cost would be reduced to $725 million. Although that being said, my numbers are very basic estimates, and a more detailed analysis of the cost model will show that increased discount rates work in several directions. And so that higher interest cost in Cal-Am's case could have other effects that might offset this change. I mentioned Cal-Am commissioned an appraisal that valued the system at more than $1 billion. In my report, I've listed and described in more detail a number of reasons why these differences exist. In my experience, any two appraisers can come up with two very different estimates of value, and that's certainly what's happening here. But there are a number of very specific assumptions that differ between the two appraisals, which help explain the difference between the two. And I was not hired to do an appraisal, and I'm not an appraiser, so I won't venture a guess beyond my estimate of what the quote unquote break even acquisition cost was that I described. Now that actual acquisition cost, again, that will be determined during the valuation phase, valuation trial, and that is if the district successfully moves through the right to take trial. And also that That process may determine that the district owes severance charges to CalAm for various costs that aren't reflected in the price, but which may be incurred by CalAm. And so that also will be a future determination made by the courts that will affect or could affect the acquisition cost by the district. Now, if, as I said, district does have to go through several phases after this Lafco process. The district could lose the initial right to take trial, or Kate mentioned this as well, they may decide to abandon the process if it turns out that the future acquisition costs are infeasible, or for example, if they exceed the quote unquote break even cost, or there will be a process whereby ratepayers can protest rate increases if they decide to. Now, if the district does lose or withdraw, they'll be on the hook for some amount of CalAm's costs, legal costs during the process. And in the report, we've estimated that those losses could be as high as 25 to 34 million. And that's based on looking at some recent examples of attempted acquisitions. So this is really just to provide a potential illustration. It's hard to predict what the outcome will actually be. Also described in my report, and again, Kate mentioned there are some significant issues being deliberated. Of course, one of them is the reduction in property tax revenues that occurs as the CalAm taxable property becomes tax exempt. And the total impact estated by the district's consultant, which I've reviewed their work, is $1.26 million per year to the 14 agencies that experience an impact more than $5,000 per year. Now that number is, the 1.26 million is less than a number that Kate cited, and that's in part because of a number of adjustments or considerations by the district's property tax consultant. Probably most importantly is that most of the school districts in Monterey County, to the extent that their local property taxes drop because assessed value drops, those districts' revenues will be backfilled. The state essentially guarantees that all districts receive a minimum level of revenue, and the state equalizes revenues among all districts through property tax. And this was established starting with a California Supreme Court case back in 1976, and it's been implemented in various ways through legislation since then. Now, the other important point is that the change in assessed value in the future as a result of a switch to district ownership is a very, very small change. And there is more detail available about potential impacts on agencies, but in all cases, it's less than 1% of agency revenues and property taxes. And in the context of property taxes growing over the longer term, that growth, notwithstanding, of course, recessions and other factors that will dampen that growth, even under conservative growth assumptions, it will be much greater than that relatively very small and minor change in assessed value as a result of this project. That change in value also, in my view, should not affect either current debt payments, or also called tax overrides, or the issuance of new debt. Again, the change is very minimal. As far as the issuance of new debt, a difference in assessed value of less than 1% is simply a margin that I don't think would affect any debt that is issued. If it's that close to being infeasible such that a less than 1% assessed value change makes a difference, I don't think that debt would be issued. Now, the tax overrides I mentioned for general obligation debt, for instance, those will be affected as property becomes tax exempt. The district should not be directly affected. However, that reduced revenue will be spread over all of the other ratepayers to essentially keep the district whole. Though granted, there will be a potentially very small additional burden on those other ratepayers. Again, it's small in the context of tax growth and in the context of those taxpayers' current property tax bills. Lafco does include terms and conditions requiring the district to negotiate property tax mitigation with those districts that are affected with a loss of more than $5,000 per year. Another issue is that the acquisition does not include a number of small water and sewer systems. And so there is a concern that this change in operation and ownership could adversely affect the cost to serve those small districts, as they won't be benefiting from certain economies of scale that currently are realized. And there is a difference of opinions about the potential magnitude of those impacts or how they might be dealt with. There have been assertions rates will double or triple, although that's not substantiated by any analysis that has been presented, at least that I've seen to this point. There are a number of possible ways that rate impacts could be mitigated. The first point actually on the slide relates to Chular, which is a designated disadvantaged community, and their rate increases are limited by an agreement between CalAm, the California PUC, and of course the community members. And that agreement limits rate increases to basically a 5-year average cost of living increase, or CPI increase. There are other ways that have been mentioned that those impacts might be mitigated. I mentioned that during the court process, the courts may award severance charges to CalAm if, in fact, they suffer lost profit or value as a result of these, they might be called stranded small systems. I think it is possible that those awards could be considered by the PUC in determining the rates that could be charged to these small systems in the future. It's also possible that CalAm could recover some of those costs as a result of serving smaller systems from other revenue sources, including its statewide revenue base. There's another possibility, although it's a much longer term option of the district, if it takes over water services, providing contract services to these other small systems, although it's a complex process because those systems would not be within the district's sphere of influence, and there's a number of steps that Lafco would be involved with if that became an option in the future to help keep rates low for those small systems. So that covers the key points of my report and subsequent memorandum. And of course, I'm available for questions now or at a later point in the proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Bergson. Are there any questions from commissioners on this part of the report? See no hands going up. We'll go ahead and continue. Jonathan or Kate, did you want to make the next introduction? Or would you like me to take it from here?
Chair, we would like to ask at this time that you authorize the district general manager to provide a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and ask the district to share a presentation. They've got 15 minutes, then we'll go to CalAm for 15 minutes, and then we'll go to public comment with a little time in between for commissioners to ask questions if they feel the need. I do want to share with the public in terms of setting expectations. Everybody will have 1 minute to share their public comment with us this evening. But at this point, we will welcome forward the district for their 15 minutes. Thank you.
Chair Lopez, could I make one clarification, please?
Sure.
We did authorize that both the district and CalAm representatives would have 20 minutes each.
Okay, sorry, I misread the message earlier. We'll go 20 minutes apiece.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. I hope to stay within the 15 minutes. I do appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of the district. I can tell you that your Lafco staff has been extraordinarily thorough and very responsive to public comment. And I think that that thoroughness should allow me to spin through some of these things a little more quickly, because both Mr. Bergson and Lafco staff have covered quite a bit of it. So if I can just get this started. As you know, Measure J was a voter initiative. It's not something that the district chose to take on at its own discretion. This was the November of 2018 election period, general election, and it passed significantly with a 56% majority. And basically it said, if and when feasible, that we are to secure and maintain public ownership of all water production, storage, and delivery system assets within our territory. And why would it be in the public interest? Obviously, we're hanging our hat if our board should decide to go forward with this, that it would be lower cost to operate, meaning better for ratepayers, the same or better quality of service, and a greater governance and transparency and rate setting and overall management and governance. So why come to Lafco? This has been made pretty evident. We need to activate some latent powers as well as annex the parcels under discussion. Now, these are things the district already performs. I don't need to read them all to you, but we do production of water for treatment and sale. We store water where necessary. We do sell and distribute purified, recycled water to customers. Water quality monitoring and reporting, regulatory compliance, capital planning. We read customer meters for non-CalAm well owners. We do rate making for our water supply charge, which is based on water usage. We have billing and accounting, customer service and response, public outreach. We do supply and demand forecasting. We review the 5-year urban water management plans of at least 2 of the local utilities, including CalAm. And we do environmental stewardship and mitigation as a result of the production of water. The one thing that we don't do has been the retail sale of potable water, hence the need to activate that latent power. That latent power is included in Section 325 of the district law. You may recall that we were legislatively created in 1977 and then approved by the voters in 1978. So the power is in our legislation, but it has been dormant or latent, hence the desire to activate the ability to sell directly to retail customers. Section 326 allows us to fix and collect revenues for services, and Section 308 authorizes us by the same to fix and collect rates for any of the services. And so what we would be doing is activating our ability to do so for retail water customers in our jurisdiction. And then finally, Section 328 of our legislation said that the district shall have the power to acquire public or private water systems necessary or proper to carry out the purposes of this law. So we feel confident that the powers were pre-imagined by the drafters of our legislation more than 44 years ago. And we encourage you at this point in time to activate such powers and leave them within the legislative framework of our directly elected board. Now, these key issues have already been identified: the potential for property tax losses of other local tax receiving jurisdictions, the taxpayer lawsuit, which we've subsequently responded to, and your staff has highlighted what's in our response and our motions, but at the October 25th meeting, we had not yet responded. And then the satellite systems, which have been talked about. So focusing first on the annual property taxes, these are the top 14, actually probably 15, because as you notice, 4 from the bottom is our own district that we will be affected and take a little bit of a tax loss. But looking at the other non-water management district tax receiving agencies, as was mentioned by Mr. Bergson, these are generally less than 1% of the total revenues received by any of these agencies. And all but one are less than 0.5%, and some are almost negligible relative to their annual budget. Nevertheless, we've made a commitment to sit down in the next 60 days with all of these agencies and work on what we call a revenue neutrality transition agreement, basically a property tax sharing agreement to ameliorate some of the impact over a 5 to 7 year period or longer if warranted by the facts. We've actually developed a framework for that. So pending actual approval of our application, we will be delivering correspondence to each of these agencies within days. The taxpayer lawsuit we found has substantive defects. We believe there is no Proposition 218 violation, and that the plaintiff misreads the Ordinance 152, which created our water supply charge. But more importantly, as it relates to the Raftella study, that water supply charge has no impact on the capability of the district to provide the services, because the financing with water supply charge was excluded from the economic analysis. It was only determined that operation and finance of the purchase could be done through water rates. And then finally, we want to talk a little bit about the satellite systems. It was mentioned that there are 8 wastewater, 4 of which are actually within our jurisdiction and 4 are outside our jurisdiction. However, the drafters of Measure J only focus on water supply, not wastewater. So those 4 within our system are not subject to acquisition at this point in time. And we also did not include or exclude the roughly 8 wastewater employees of CalAM's local operation under the theory that those will continue to exist. And it's mostly just administrative overhead and management that will be receiving a change. So we've assumed all along that the cost of service based on those employees who are primarily in the field would not change. You can see here the 5 satellites are Ralph Lane north of Salinas, Toro and Ambler, which are in the Corral de Tierra area, and then Chular, which has been mentioned earlier, south of Salinas, and Garapata down the coast. So the satellite systems don't get orphaned or abandoned immediately. You know, they are regulated through the Public Utilities Commission and are at the service of CalAm, they will still have the obligation to serve. As Mr. Berkson mentioned, we could serve through contract if in fact that the administrative overhead and the management aspect would exist in-house with us now as a service provider. Costs are not expected to rise significantly. As was mentioned, Chular is limited by agreement to inflation only. So it can't absorb additional administrative overhead or what have you. And we do believe that the Public Utilities Commission, just as it's done with acquisitions of other entities throughout the state, like Citizens Water, you know, the ratepayers of Monterey County pay for the Citizens Water acquisition, but there's no service in Monterey County from any of the former Citizens Water entities. So the Public Utilities Commission has a history of spreading costs across the entire California service area of its regulated companies. Let's shift our attention now to the annexation. I think it's been made very clear by staff where these properties are located. You see Yankee Point to the south and Hidden Hills up off the Laurellis grade. And there's 38 parcels in Yankee Point, which are primarily all in existence. I believe there's only 1 or 2 vacant lots. And then there are 20 parcels in Hidden Hills with several vacant lots. We believe that this just brings our boundary into kind of mutual coexistence with the California American main system and their 3 other subsidiaries that we're talking about. And it's really an inconsequential annexation. We did, however, host an information session and send out a notice with some information. It was selectively poorly attended, meaning most owners didn't really care. We did have several conversations with property owners. And I think they understood that the outcomes of annexation are no change in who provides their water service. You know, that would be related to the condemnation proceeding, but with this annexation, it's still CalAm until it is not. No new fees or charges because they're already subject to the CalAm rates. And because they did not participate in our original Prop 218 for the water supply charge, we would not levy that charge on these parcels. And there are no new rules or regulations because these parcels are already subject to district rules because the water provider, CalAm, is subject to our water distribution system permit. So I think because it was much ado about nothing, most of these property owners chose not to attend the Zoom information session. Now, I do want to focus a little bit on your job, and I think this has been covered very well in the staff report. But there are certain criteria under CKH, and you know, cost and adequacy of the services is paramount. And I think the staff report and the Berkson independent study has pretty much confirmed that yes, the district can provide the services at a reasonable cost. Another section of the criteria for approval is that mutual social and economic interests are met. And I think when you view this in the context of the initiative and the desire for local control, that that criteria is met. Another section is that landowners, voters, or residents of the affected territory have spoken. Well, as you can see through your comment letters from landowners and residents, they're quite a bit tipped in favor of letting this move forward through Lafco. And certainly the impact of Measure J at the voting booth was a clear indication that voters are very supportive of this activation of latent powers. Another section is the ability to provide the services and the sufficiency of revenues to do so, which we've already kind of touched on, and the independent consultant has touched on. That ability and sufficiency are there. And then finally, is it in the interest of present or future inhabitants? And we do believe that the promise of long-term local control, cost savings, is in the interest of present and future inhabitants. And finally, as I mentioned before, we are a public agency created by the legislature with an elected board of directors. And that board should be empowered to fulfill its legislative functions and then let the courts decide whether it's truly in the public interest and what the valuation should be. And with that, I thank you for your time. I am available for questions either now or later. And I don't know how we just did on time, but I'd like to reserve anything that's left if needed for comment or follow-up towards the end.
Thank you, Mr. Stolt. With that, I'll ask Jonathan how much time was left, just so we have that.
Tracking about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Then with that, we'll go to representatives from Cal-Am.
Good evening, Chairman Lopez and members of the commission. I'm George Sonoff. I represent Cal-Am. I'm going to apologize in advance for talking fast tonight because there's a lot to cover. This is the largest and most expensive proposal for expansion of a special district to be before any Lafco. In prior years, in response to local citizen lobbying, there have been some large special district expansion proposals attempted in other counties with very unfortunate results. In response to those attempts 12 years ago, in 2009, the California legislature passed AB 2484. The law amended the Cortese-Knox Act for proposed special district latent powers expansions by deeming them to be changes of organization, which triggers more intensive review and requires Lafco to examine the financial consequences of the proposal. The amendments were motivated out of concern that local citizens are prone to push expansions that put taxpayers at risk and jeopardize the finances of special districts. And Ms. Fried, I'd like you to show, here is a Senate committee's report on the legislation from 2008. Can you share your screen, please? This is a 2008 report from the Senate Local Government Committee. The first page, we've highlighted just a couple of excerpts, says local agency formation commissions, LAFCOs, are the legislature's watchdogs over cities and special districts boundary changes, which are known as changes of organization. Can you go to the next page, please? And in the comments, it says no hollow shells. AB 2484 fills the gap between local enthusiasm and fiscal reality. The bill's key reform requires LAFCO to deny a district's request to exercise a latent power if the district can't pay for the new service. When local boosters want their special district to deliver a popular service, AB 2484 requires LAFCO to ask the tough question: who's going to pay? Unless the district can point to revenues from special taxes, benefit assessments, or fees, the bill requires LAFCO to say no. Our lawmakers emphasize that LAFCOs are the watchdogs that must guard against financially unwise expansions, even in the face of pressure. Now, the conclusion in the staff report submitted for this hearing says, and I quote, "The recommended conditional approval will enable the district to proceed at its discretion with its effort to acquire the Cal-Am Monterey water system. It is important to note that the district's proposal to LAFCO is an early milestone in a long process." That's from page 7 of the staff report. With due respect, this is not a milestone, something to just be passed on the road to a destination. This LAFCO process is a serious checkpoint at which LAFCO is the guard. There is nothing in the CKH Act that suggests that if the proposal includes a long process that involves future litigation, that LAFCO can relax its review and essentially pass the buck to the judicial branch and future court cases to work things out and make the tough decisions. LAFCO's job is not an easy one. Regardless of arguments made by local boosters for expansion, LAFCO needs to weigh those statutory factors for a change of organization. And the factors are quite broad. Mr. Stoltz showed, just little bits of a few of them. But subdivision C of section 56668 says Lafco needs to consider, quote, the effect of the proposed action on mutual social and economic interests and on local government structure of the county. And as the law directs, Lafco must scrutinize the proposal and ask the tough question, what the legislature called the tough question: who's going to pay? We submit that if Monterey Lafco were to insulate itself from the pressure on its institution that has been exerted by the Water Management District and its supporters, the institution would hold tonight and Lafco would reject this proposal. This proposal is a poster child for why the law was changed in 2009. It should not be allowed to pass the Lafco checkpoint. The district's proposal calls for the prosecution of the highest dollar value eminent domain lawsuit in California history. The district projects that to condemn the Monterey water system, it would have to pay $513 million and assume $180 million in additional debt. That's their projection. So by their own financial projections, they're calling for about $700 million in new public debt. This would be the largest debt issuance by a mile in Monterey County's history. If the district never issues the debt because it loses in an eminent domain suit, which it likely will, Monterey residents will be saddled with tens of millions of dollars in expenses to pay the district's legal expenses and to pay all of CalAm's legal expenses. That financial exposure alone should cause Lafco to deny this proposal. Under the law that has existed in California for the last 30 years, no government entity, no city, no special district has ever succeeded in an eminent domain trial to take over a regulated utility. In every case, the failed attempts resulted in many millions of dollars wasted by government entities. And why do I say the district will likely lose here as well? Well, the district is likely to lose because of its project, in quotes. By law, the district must thoroughly state exactly what it plans to do with the property it intends to take by eminent domain. And that project is what a court must evaluate when deciding to allow whether to allow the taking. And Ms. Freed, if we can show the next slide, we have an excerpt from the EIR, the district's EIR. This is where they have to define their project. And it says that, and I quote from the EIR, the district is proposing only to acquire and operate the existing system and is not proposing changes or expansion to the physical Monterey water system or to the associated water rights, nor is the district proposing any changes to the manner of operation of the Monterey water system or the exercise of associated water rights. That's from page 1-2. And it says a few pages later, the district would operate the Monterey water system and exercise the associated water rights in the same manner CalAm has done. And this is repeated throughout the EIR. So when Mr. Stoltz says, oh, there'll be increased safety or better operation or something, that's not the project. Their project, which is what matters, they had to define it, it is to hire CalAm's employees and operate the water system in the same way, changing nothing. And this project is so limited and risky because they've never operated a water system, anything like this, that a confiscation of the water system under eminent domain will not be justifiable. Mr. Stoll will say, and has said, sure, well, that's what's in the EIR, but we'll make some changes later, a year or so later, and we'll do some good things. That's not the way eminent domain works. Imagine if it did, if the government could confiscate property saying, well, we're going to take the property and we don't have a plan to change anything, but trust us, later on down the road, after we get the property, we'll be doing some good things and we'll let you know about it then. The law doesn't allow that. The entire project here is to operate the same system, the same way, with the same people, and it won't wash in the courts. Now they say, well, our justification is we're going to decrease water rates. As you've seen, and Mr. Bergson showed, under their projection, the maximum savings, their district's own projections, if everything goes right, is $22 a month on the average water bill by 2030. The hope of that savings is not going to carry the day for several reasons. First, the savings, if they were to occur, would be on the backs of the local agencies that lose tax revenues. It's also on the avoidance. It's also based, their calculations are also based on the avoidance of a lot of money in state and federal income taxes. So there are losers there as well. And courts take those losses very seriously. Second, any savings would be on the backs of these remaining customers in Chular and other areas. And Chular is a disadvantaged community. They're going to face higher rates because all of CalAm's equipment and facilities and its employees in the central district, in the central system will be taken. Now, you've heard in the past, well, PUC has limited Chular to consumer price index, inflation increases. Well, that's only because that was rates were set in the context of CalAm owning a very large system. If this system is taken, all prior PUC rate setting approaches are out the window here. They're going to have to recalculate everything. There will be an entirely new rate case, and these remaining customers are going to be exposed to higher rates. Somebody has to pay this added cost to serve them. There's no Santa Claus. Finally, the project is going to fail because water system from CalAm has been safe and reliable. Yes, the cost is higher than most want. But Monterey is probably the most difficult region to supply water to in the country. CalAm has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Monterey. All these costs have been fully scrutinized and approved by the PUC. And it is the PUC, not CalAm, that sets the water rates. So the project to hire all of CalAm's employees to run the system, where the district has no experience in doing that, and removing all PUC oversight because they won't be involved anymore if the district takes it, in favor of handing it to the district that hopes to run the water system as well as CalAm has, will not be deemed to be in the public interest. Given these realities, the district's project deserves to be rejected here, and if it's not, it's highly likely to be rejected in the courts. Now, the district has supposedly assessed its financial exposure from losing in the courts. Can we see the next slide, please? This is their financial exposure slide that was shown in a district meeting in November 2019. It's called financial exposure. This is their own slide. And they said, well, the feasibility portion will take us up to maybe $750,000. That's already been $2 million or so. But then the next two are the eminent domain case. They said, well, if we lose in the right to take phase, we'll lose 3 to 6 million, and the valuation phase up to 20 million if we lose in that phase. These numbers are wishful thinking. We've provided the evidence of the actual losses from other cases. If we could see the next slide, please. When the city of Claremont attempted the same thing, much smaller system, less complicated, they lost in the first phase. Their total losses were $13,600,000. That's all been submitted to Mr. Burks, and he has the state. I gave it to him. In Apple Valley, they lost in the first phase. It's going to be $20 million plus, not $6 million. Mr. Berkson just said it could be up to 34 million. Well, here's what his report said. MPWMD's total cost for both trials could be higher than its estimated $15 to $20 million range and could total 25 million to 34 million or more. So to ask the tough question, who's going to pay? The district can't afford the loss. Its budget shows an available reserve of only $11.5 million. If we can see the budget slides, please. This is from their May 2021 budget. The next one is the pie chart. In their budget, well, we don't have the next slide. What's that? Okay, this is their reserve analysis for fiscal year 2021, 2022. And you can see this pie chart, the slices out down there are already reserved for Mechanics Bank Reserve, OPB, EB, Pension Reserve. But the unreserved, the general operating reserve, the stuff, the part that's not already allocated, was $11,500,000. So to ask the tough question, who's going to pay if the district loses $30 or $40 million or more in a failed eminent domain takeover cases? And how would that affect the district? These questions have never been answered. Your staff resolution would have Lafco simply accept and adopt a letter that Mr. Stoltz sent a couple of weeks ago on the topic. If we can see the draft resolution in your package, this is attachment 14.1 at page 8. It says, in the event the district proceeds with an eminent domain lawsuit against Cal-Am and is unsuccessful, the district may face significant financial exposure to both district expenses and Cal-Am expenses that may be payable to the district. The district, and note the quote here, this is where they're quoting from Mr. Stoltz's letter. The district, quote, fully expects to have cash reserves available to manage an adverse legal judgment or a later decision to abandon acquisition despite the MPTA lawsuit outcome. In the unlikely situation reserves are sufficient, the district would have access to either publicly offered notes or to private lending from select banks who desire to leverage their balance sheets for the amount of any shortfall. Such lending is not unusual and would be secured by future district revenues. In no case would such an outcome affect solvency of the district or the ability to deliver its services. So that's written by Mr. Stoltz, and it's in your resolution. So you're being asked to accept in your resolution this bold conclusion. Where is the analysis about the district's solvency or impairment of its operations once it wastes tens of millions of dollars on lawyers and gets hit with a massive bill for Cal-Am's litigation costs? Which taxpayers will bear that loss? It won't be the private lending from select banks. These bankers are going to exact a high cost if they loan that much money. And so the next who's going to pay question really is the massive debt of $700 million. Well, the district claims that's going to be paid through water bills, and that they'll save money by cutting operating costs and avoiding the payment of taxes. And Mr. Berkson and the staff report accept that and say, this is a, quote, reasonable basis that they can cut bills. Well, you can find a reasonable basis. Get a couple consultants, hire a consultant and say, we want to do a feasibility. Can you come up with a reasonable basis for what's going to be charged in 5, 10, or 30 years? And they can. Now, I'm almost out of time. The loss of taxes, you've seen lower numbers here. They've talked about, well, Ms. McKenna and Mr. Berkson didn't even quite agree. Look, the financial projection that is from Raftellus, that is the one that supposedly proves they can cut rates, states that the loss of tax revenue to Monterey local agencies would be $75,204,700 over 20 years. That's the Raftellus report. It's Exhibit 17 to that report in row 9. That's how they claim that they can cut tax rates or cut water rates eventually. And, you know, the fire district and the school district have Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, which was not on anybody's chart, have sent in letters objecting to this for this reason. Mr. Berkson and Lafco staff have said, well, the school district's going to be backfilled. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District's not buying that. They sent you a letter on Friday afternoon saying that they're still worried that there's significant, lots of questions have not been answered. They're not convinced that they're fully backfilled. And, you know, it's been stated that there's a condition here that requires the district to negotiate agreements with these water districts, to negotiate agreements with these other districts to make them whole. I implore you to read that condition. It's condition 9, it's in section 9C of that draft resolution you have at page 16. The only thing the condition requires is that the water district should use its, quote, best efforts to resolve disputes with any districts. There's nothing that requires them to pay a dime or even to enter into any agreement at all. And if they were going to pay something, who's going to pay it? There's no money for paying lost property taxes in any of these financial projections that they've given Lafco. The final point I want to raise is that the condition stated in 9F that the draft resolution that requires the district to indemnify Lafco in the event of future litigation is not enforceable legally. County council knows what the case is. We've sent it to them. I have to say that for the record, that condition is not enforceable. And I want to close by thanking Lafco staff. I don't agree with their recommended outcome or their analysis, obviously, but they have been unfailingly courteous and responsive throughout this, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sonif. Then at this point, I do see a hand up from Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Craig, did you have a question at this point?
Nope. I think it's
Okay.
because I had my hand on my head that it automatically raised my hand for me. Sorry.
Gotta love technology. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn and see if Mr. Stolt would like to make any additional comments.
Well, I'd like to be brief. Much of what Mr. Sonif just told you has already been debunked or demonstrated to be false. There were a couple of things where I think the entire story wasn't told. The changes that will take place will be lower cost service, will be more transparent governance, an ability to see a rate study, what's going into your rates from a rate study consultant. And yes, there may be water quality improvements, but our premise has been that we would operate the same way for about a year to identify what areas of operations need to be changed. It's not operate continuously for the next X decades with no changes. And one big change will be no shareholders. When you talk about the size of the debt, the scary numbers about debt, well, our investment bankers and our financial consultants have demonstrated that the cost of the acquisition and the debt that's required fits within and is less than all the other things that you have to pay for with CalAm, including shareholder rate of return. So it's not a big boogeyman out there that's the biggest debt issuance ever in Monterey County history. California has outstripped this size of a debt issue repeatedly. And the marketplace knows how to accept revenue-based debt from water utilities. So it's been demonstrated it can be paid for. There have been CalAm failures here. The inability to get a water supply project done, failed water supply projects that you, the ratepayers, have paid for through surcharges on your bills. So we don't need to litigate the past mistakes of the company. And frankly, my board may choose to not litigate the future change in ownership. But they do need the ability to move forward and carry on their legislative function and the task that's been put in front of them by the voters. And that's all we're asking for from you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stolt. Now I'm going to go to Mr. Berkson for a couple minutes.
Okay, I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have at this point.
Okay, then with that, any questions from the commissioners? All right, Supervisor Commissioner Askew.
Thank you. Trying to figure out where my mute button is there. MPUSD has been was just raised by Mr. Stonoff. And I appreciate the letter that they sent. And I actually reached out to the superintendent this afternoon to get clarification on the intent of that letter. And are we able to ask for clarification on the backfill revenue? I spent 5 years on a school board and I'm very familiar with education funding. My understanding is that the district is not included as one of the taxing agencies because of the way that the constitutional funding of education works. And I'm just wondering if anyone can get clarification on that point.
Well, yeah, I think I'm not sure exactly what sort of clarification, but in the years that I've been working on impacts of local projects on school finance. I've come to learn that this system of school funding in the state of California basically guarantees that all that revenues are equalized across all districts. And that's because, as I mentioned, that 1976 Supreme Court case that was the result of inequities of funding between rich districts and poor districts. And so the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District is one of those districts that does get backfilled and guaranteed a minimum level of funding. And so their funding, their minimum level of funding, that is essentially the same as all other districts, notwithstanding that there are some demographic specific adjustments that the state sometimes makes. That funding is completely independent of any particular changes in assessed value at the local level. Certainly changes in local assessed value ultimately affect how much the state gets in total property taxes. But if a parcel or several parcels become tax exempt, that has no bearing whatsoever on the funding of the school district directly. They'll still get their minimum guaranteed funding from the state. And I think that's why maybe this issue really hasn't come to the forefront with the district in the past, because they simply haven't had the need to deal with those local changes in assessed value, because they did continue to receive that funding from the state. Does that help, or is there more?
It does. And I think I would caution anyone from putting words in the mouth of an organization that's not here to defend their intent. And just wanted to make sure we were all really clear on that point. Thank you.
Commissioner, ask you if I could just say, I agree. You shouldn't put words in anybody's mouth. I would just urge you to read the letter they sent on Friday.
Please, Mr. Sonif, at this point, that point is passed. Thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Oglesby.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this comment or question goes to Mr. Brand. This, having heard both sides, you already reviewed their documents, you made comments, you made a report, but tonight both sides spoke to the financial ability of this issue. Did any of those comments change your mind or your opinion to the board today?
No. I've heard nothing that has changed or contradicted or been new information to lead me to change my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners at this point? See no hands going up. We're going to go ahead and turn to public comment at this point. Ask folks to use the raise hand function. Again, that option is available in your reactions tab or at the bottom of your screen, depending on your version of Zoom. If you are participating via landline or cell phone, *9 will give you the ability to unmute yourself. We will be doing 1 minute per public speaker this evening. I'm going to go in order as they've shown up on my screen, which is first hand raised stays at the top. So I'm going to work through them. If you raise and lower your hand, you will be moved to the back of the line. So just please be aware of that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. The first hand up that I see is Alexander Henson. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am the attorney for Public Water Now. I have to start this by saying, commenting on CalAM's presentation, in which they claim to have safe and reliable service, that the district can only aspire to equal their type of service. And I'm scratching my head remembering, wait a minute, we've been in a moratorium for over 30 years. They haven't been able to supplement our supply or avoid the state's water board order. Tonight, you have nothing before you to base a no vote. It would be absolutely arbitrary and capricious for you to say, no, the district should not proceed. You may be a checkpoint, but you are not the end point, And I would urge you that to vote conditional approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. We're at time. Thank you. I'm going to go to Rick Hewer next. Rick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I'm Rick Hoyer, president of Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. I won't dignify Mr. Stolt with responding to a thing. You already have a letter from us showing the errors in his response. I do want to speak to the aspect of the voters have spoken. The people who are having their rates raised in the stranded districts didn't get to vote. No one knew at the time of the vote the impact on schools and fire and others. And a major incorrect thing has been stated here a few minutes ago. The way MPUSD is funded is radically different than Carmel or PG. Carmel and PG are not on the standardized state funding. They are 100% on their property tax revenues. So I do not believe there would be any backfilling to their losses, and they are up there near the top of the list of what's being lost. And they should be guaranteed that money to be coming back. They shouldn't be paying and subsidizing this attempt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewer. We're going to go to Sarcy Folsom next. Sarcy, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. I wish we had a longer public comment, but I've already made that statement on multiple different occasions. I just like to say there's been a lot raised here about revenue for the county. How about not being able to add a bathroom to your house for 30 years? How much revenue would be raised if we were allowed to add a bathroom to our house because the moratorium was lifted, because MPWMD took control of our water supply? That would raise a lot of revenue. This is a straw man argument by CalAm, and it needs to be dismissed. Please go ahead and activate the latent powers of MPWMD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Folsom. We're going to go to Melody Crislock next. Melody, floor is yours.
Melody Crislock, Public Water Now. Your staff has done an excellent job in making a case for conditional approval. You've seen firsthand the lies and legal tricks CalAm uses to get its way. The Peninsula wants a chance to solve our water problems without this greedy corporate bully in our way. According to Lafco guidelines, you must consider local policy. This buyout was mandated by the voters. It is local policy. You've met your responsibilities. Conditional approval is the only safe vote to protect Lafco. Let the court decide on the buyout. You have no grounds for a no vote on this, no case for denial. How would Lafco defend a no vote in court? Do the right thing for the Peninsula and protect Lafco at the same time. Vote yes on conditional approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. We're going to go to Mike Urquidez next. Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. Michael Urquidez, Monterey County Regional Fire District. Just want to remind the commissioners that we did write a letter in February and September to Lafco with our concerns of the loss of property taxes. We do want to thank the applicant. We were able to get a draft revenue neutrality agreement last Friday. That has been sent to our council. And as of right now, obviously, they have some concerns with the language, with good faith efforts. That was a condition by Lafco. They're going to want some additional safeguards. So that's going to be a negotiation that will be in the future. But at this point, that's still in the works, and it has not went back to my parent body for approval. So I just wanted to update the commission that we did receive a draft Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We're going to go to Paul's iPad next. Paul, floor is yours. You're muted, Paul. We'll go ahead and restart the clock for you.
Sorry. Hi, Paul Bruno. I've been actively engaged in water issues here on the Monterey Peninsula for over 30 years. My family business does infrastructure work and works for pretty much every water supplying entity in the area. In short, I know water systems. I know the Monterey Peninsula water supply issues. CalAm operates a very large and complex system with over 600 miles of pipeline. To put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of pipeline from here to Phoenix. Cal operates this system very well. Their 12-month rolling average water loss is about 5.4%. Other systems easily run 10 to 30% leakage rates. It'd be one thing if the district was claiming that Cal had mismanaged their system or had a major water quality problems, like in Detroit, but that has not happened. In fact, the district said in their own operations plan that they basically do everything pretty much the same as Cal. So why should we take on hundreds of $millions of in debt? For what? They cannot make the case that Cal has mismanaged their system. Let's put the money and our focus on solving the water supply issues. This takeover should be stopped now.
Thank you, Paul. We're going to go to Jerry next. Jerry Edelin, the floor is yours. You have 1 minute to share your comments with this commission.
Thank you, Chair Lopez and Honorable Lafco Commissioners. If you approve this application, the district will greatly expand its operations and costs by adding more than 80 new full-time employees, thereby quadrupling its workforce. And there's nothing in the district's proposal that will provide new drought-free water to solve our county's water supply problem. Remember, the Monterey Peninsula Regional Water Authority was formed 9 years ago because at that time, like now, the Water Management District was doing absolutely nothing to increase the amount of new water for the Monterey Peninsula, and a state cease and desist order is looming. That state and cease and desist order still looms, and the deadline is coming fast. After 9 years of effort and a workable desalination plant was in the final stages of approval, the Water Management District once again, stepped in to fight the approval of the desal plant. If the desal plant isn't constructed during the next extended drought, there will be no water to recycle, and we'll be in an even worse situation than we were 9 years ago. Please disapprove this application.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
We're over time. Thank you. Appreciate that. We're going to go to Wallace Notley next. Wallace, the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Cal customers need approval for the water district latent power. We have suffered long under Cal-Am's poor stewardship and oppressive rates. The water district and Monterey One Water have worked together to find the environmentally beneficial and practical water recycling solution to our water shortage. Lafco was formed to provide efficient local government agency services, yet Cal-Am has wasted our money on legal fees, lobbying, and insisting on an unneeded, environmentally destructive and expensive desalination plant that would double or more our most expensive water rates. Many residents who live outside the Cal-Am service area do not realize that Peninsula residents cannot continue to afford to pay these water rates. Please vote as your staff recommends. Acknowledge the will of the 24,000 voters who voted to pass Measure J and leave whether the buyout is feasible to the courts. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Wallace. We're going to go to Phil Wellman next. Phil, the floor is yours. Go ahead and unmute yourself and share your comments.
Phil Wellman, Carmel. Despite the Water Management District's effort to clearly present the facts to Lafco and thoughtfully respond to concerns, Cal-Am has continued to rely on fear-mongering and tiresome delay tactics throughout this process. To what end? Mr. Sonif doesn't realize how much Cal-Am adds to our bills when they fail on a water project or when we don't use enough water. We can tell you who pays when Cal-Am decides to add $34 million for failed bill projects to our bills, or the $64 million Cal-Am added for the water we saved during the last drought. We pay. Don't expect us to be frightened off by a $20 million legal bill if MPWMD were to lose, which is doubtful. Please do the right thing for the Monterey Peninsula and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. We're going to go to Carolyn next. Carolyn, I see you next
yes,
on
I'd
my
like
screen.
to speak on behalf of citizens who voted. I am a PG citizen and a water user. We voted for feasibility. I think feasibility has been shown. And I think we also voted because many of us believe that public ownership considers the interests of all the citizens and all of our concerns. A desalination plant would be devastating to our area. And I think that we could find other solutions which would work better and do less damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. We're going to go to 58 Eugenia58@gmail.com next. The floor is yours. You're muted. Go ahead and unmute for me.
My name is Sylvia Shi. from Seaside. One fact is so very clear to me that we have the highest rate of water in the nation. If KLM is operating in such efficiency, that could not be the fact. Seaside proportionally has a lot of low-income families on fixed income. We are reaching a point where we couldn't pay to KLM the water rate. And so I plead the commissioner to approve the proposal, the application from the water district. Because if I compare the two operators, the district has operated in a better fashion, more efficiently than KLM, which has brought us no water, no new water in the last 30 years. And just consider, one is for
Thank you,
profit,
Ms.
one
Shi.
is not.
We're over
Thank you.
time. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. We're going to go to Peter Mountier next. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that the Water Management District is the group that opposed CalAmp's desal plant and proposes that we basically live with the same amount of water that we have on the peninsula now for the next 40 years. Public Water Now brought up the moratorium, calling it CalAmp's fault, when the State Water Resources Control Board has stated outright that lifting the moratorium can't be achieved by water recycling alone or Pure Water Monterey by itself, the same project Public Water Now supports so earnestly. The Water Management District was formed almost 50 years ago to solve our water supply issues, and it has summarily failed to do that. That's why we're all here today. Their only plan is to make up the water that we're losing from the Carmel River by taking wastewater from the Salinas Valley, treating it and shipping it to the peninsula. Salinas Valley needs this water to solve its own problems, and it's not at all clear that the peninsula has any right to that water. These are the people you'd be putting your water supply in the hands of. So if you support solving our water crisis, you can't approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mountier. We're going to go to Susan Schiavone next. Susan, the floor is yours. Go ahead and unmute yourself and share your comment.
Thank you. Susan Schiavone from Seaside. Measure J passed for valid reasons. CalAm has mismanaged our water sources, charges exorbitant rates, and passes through costs for acquisitions with no benefit for us. MPWD will deliver water at a reasonably evaluated rate without profit motive. Seaside has a per capita income of $26,172, a poverty rate of 14.9%, and 43% low income. We have a 57% minority population and 11% are seniors, many on fixed incomes. So Seaside bears even higher costs per income level for CalAm's water. Many do not qualify for help due to renting. This is a serious environmental justice issue for us. Please realize the urgent benefit for the people that moving this application forward means. Conditional approval protects Lafco and puts the responsibility on the court. Further delay will only punish the ratepayers with more costs and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We're going to go to Lizbeth Vischer. Lizbeth, sorry if I mispronounced that. The floor is yours.
I do okay.
No, you pronounce it well. This is good evening. Lisbeth Visser, Citizens for Just Water. I live in Marina, where we receive our water from Marina Coast Water District, a public water district. We have one of the lowest rates in the region, but CalAm has the highest rates in all of the US. Why wouldn't you support the Peninsula ratepayers who voted, fair and square, to have the public buyout of CalAm? Why would you turn a blind eye to the fact that a private for-profit corporation charges their ratepayers much more than a neighboring public water district? And this is not even counting the future CalAm charges and escalation of water rates, should they ever be allowed to build their desal project, a project that is environmentally unjust to Marina and is an illegal water grab completely opposed by the people who must actually pay for it. There is just too much wrong that has already been identified about the operations of CalAm. Let the voters finally have their way and do not hinder the buyout. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisbeth. We're going to go to Troy Ishikawa next. Troy, the floor is yours. Feel free to unmute and start your public comment.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Lopez and fellow Lafco commissioners. Troy Ishikawa from Carmel. Please approve both Monterey Peninsula Water Management District's applications for conditional activation of latent powers and sphere of influence amendment and annexation. the Monterey Water Management District is capable of financing the CalAm buyout. This has been verified by international investment bankers and financial consultants. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. We're going to go to Dr. Scott Dick next. Dr. Scott
Thank you,
Dick, the
Chris.
floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. MCOR's concern is the loss of the millions of dollars a year in tax revenue, especially the loss to the fire district with the new fire abatement and other requirements because of wildfire issues. The loss to the fire district of $139,000, which represents a firefighter in their letter. And they do have, as the chief brought up, an agreement to move forward. But until there's something guaranteed in writing about how those losses will be made up, I think you ought to vote no. There's a requirement for fire districts to inspect, and not having a firefighter in one district when they need more firefighters is really important in my mind. And so, the fire danger in Monterey County is always present. And I think those losses need to be mitigated before LAFCO votes yes to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to go to Marley next. Marley, you have the ability to unmute. The floor is yours. Marley, are you with us? All right, we'll come back to you, Marley. I'm going to go to Eric Tynan. Eric?
Well, wait. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Go ahead, Marley. Go
Okay,
for it.
thank you. You can be very proud of your staff for doing extremely detailed due diligence on all aspects of the application. Please ignore the fear mongering and misinformation. Approval will not hurt the Salinas Valley. And CalAm promised everyone desal, but it didn't even have a water source and still does not. The district must comply with your conditions to pursue a buyout. When and if that it does, CalAm and others can present their arguments in a court case to determine if a buyout is in the public interest. Today, the only reasonable and defensible course of action is to grant the conditional approvals your staff recommends. Thank you.
Thank you, Marley. We're going to go ahead and go over to Eric next. Eric, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Supervisor. I just want to say nobody in the Salinas Valley voted for Measure J. To put it on our backs to solve their problems when Carmel sends its wastewater to Pebble Beach and we send ours over to do crops. Meantime, they have no affordable housing, but Castroville has to take on that role too. So there's nothing in this whole thing that helps out the Salinas Valley. All the water is coming from the Salinas Valley. So bad mouthing our representatives on the LAFCO board, I think was counterproductive because you guys are doing a great job. The other thing I say is the high cost. Well, if you keep on, these vocal minority keeps on voting down every water project that's cheaper, they have to go to the next one and the next one. Who pays for the cost of that study in the first place? There's nothing, this solution's all coming from the Salinas Valley when we need it. Castro is a severely disadvantaged community, 100%. And we had an agreement with Peninsula and the management district that would have been a win-win-win. And instead they went with this Measure J nonsense. And
thank you, Mr. Tynan. We're at time. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to go to Anita Dyer next. Anita, the floor is yours.
I'd like to thank the entire LAFCO staff for their very well considered and presented arguments and the report that they sent us for this meeting. And I'd like to give a shout out to Mr. Sonoff for that deliciously terrifying presentation of all the terrible things that are going to happen to us if this is approved. And I would continue to encourage LAFCO to approve this resolution for the district to proceed. My primary argument is that CalAm has consistently for decades overdrafted our water table and has failed utterly to provide new sources of water. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. We're going to go to Michael Baer next. Michael, feel free to unmute. The floor is yours.
Good evening. First, I'd like to add my voice to, I think you do a disservice to the public only allowing us 1 minute. we've been fighting this battle for a long time. It's a big decision. And if 40 people spoke for 1 extra minute, it would be a 40-minute longer meeting. And I think you serve the public and they deserve it. I'd like to ask that you consider striking condition F about indemnification. I think that's a very problematic thing. I wrote a letter about it October 20th to your board. And what I'd like to point out is the ratepayers pay all of CalAM's bills. We were paying $600, $800 an hour to listen to Mr. Sonoff because that ends up on our bills. And so if CalAM sues you, then we could have litigation for a long time, and the ratepayers are paying both sides of it if we're paying for your defense. If the district sues you, that means the district is suing you and paying for your defense as well. So in both cases, the ratepayers or the district is paying both sides of the case.
We're over time. Thank you, Mr. Baer.
All right.
I'm going to go to
Great tax.
Patricia Fay,
Your staff
Majera
has
next.
recommended approval. Please approve it.
Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Patricia Fay Magira, Seaside. The voters in Seaside overwhelmingly voted for Measure J. We pay the same extremely high rates for water despite lower incomes. Most people do not qualify for assistance. Renters do not qualify, nor do people in mobile homes. Many seniors on fixed incomes struggle to afford the high rates, impacting hygiene and quality of life. Several look to regular use of our municipal pool to wash hair and shower to save water costs. We want a public water agency that works on our benefit, not profit. Please approve this application today. Stop allowing CalAM's attorneys to drag this out. Move this to the courts for a valid hearing. Please do not block the will of the voters and the legal jurisdiction of the water district. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I see that we have another speaker from Sarcy. Sarcy, if you don't mind turning on your camera and go ahead and let the other speaker have the floor at this point.
Thank you. My name is Sean Folsom and I live in Carmel Valley. I've been here since 1956. I personally have seen CalAM water trucks load up at Rosie's Bridge with camouflage netting over it and the whole business. And I want our Measure J and our ability to have our own public water move forward. Please vote to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We're going to go to John Tilley next. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you, commissioners, for all your hard work. If you vote yes on the district borrowing $600 million to $1 billion, it would be the largest borrowing by a public agency in Monterey County. It would also be the largest condemnation in the history of the state of California. Like, these are the historic numbers just to support this effort. With an intimidating list of questions the district has not answered is concerning. The district has not, for instance, responded if they could finance the attempted takeover. The letter from their bankers was non-committal. And this is the point where you should really want a yes, that we can firmly do this financing. That was not the case. And when asked if they could survive financially as a public agency, the district response did not provide the assurances she wanted at this point. They are about to take on, what, $25, $34 million in debt we heard tonight. Not a good place to put yourself in when there's so much other work to do in this county with water work. Our county has very important water work to do right now, supporting the pursuit of a lawsuit ridden with debt, ridden with the promise of failure is not a good place to put our resources. I can think of many, many other places to do this. I'm sure we all can. But more importantly, I think, for God, love of God, supporting the people in the Peninsula that need housing,
Thank you, John.
Homeless people that need help is where we should put our money. Thank you very much.
Over time. I'm going to go ahead and go to Tammy Jennings next. Tammy, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Tammy Jennings. I'm a CalAM water customer. I've lived in Monterey County for over 50 years, specifically in Monterey, and I have lived in Salinas, other places as well, but specifically Monterey for the last 25 years. It's outrageous that the voter approved Measure J in 2018 It's still not been implemented, mainly due to CalAM's blatant delay tactics. MPWMD should be allowed to exercise its latent powers to provide water service. CalAM certainly hasn't provided any new water sources ever. They only do illegal things like overpump the Carmel River and then charge its customers exorbitant prices to cover their mistakes and legal expenses. Lafco has had MPWMD's application under consideration since February. You have done your due diligence. God bless you for that. And it's time to approve MPWMD's application and allow the voter mandated process to move forward.
Thank you, Tammy. We appreciate your comment. We're over time.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to go ahead and make one last call here, see if there's anybody out there who's not yet raised their hand or thinks their hand is up. If you have not yet spoken and wish to, this is the last opportunity. Please raise your hand, *9 via landline or cell phone, or in your reactions tab at the bottom of your screen, or feel free to turn on your camera and wave at me, and that'll give me the same indication. Seeing no additional hands up, we will close public comment and bring it back. And with that, we are back with the commission. And at this point, I want to see if there's any questions from commissioners to either our staff or any of the presenters. Okay, then before us, we have a decision to make. I'm happy to open up the floor and see if anybody wishes to share comments to start us off. Okay, happy to start off. I know this is a tough decision for everybody. For me, there's still questions that I need answered. I'm not comfortable moving forward today. And I have spoken with several folks on every side of this issue, but I still have questions about the impact to my communities, specifically the community of Chular. And I don't feel comfortable in the opinions that have been shared so far that it's guaranteed that their rates won't go up. And I need to know what the impacts are to those districts outside of this particular district that's being taken over. For me, it's these other commitments that have been made over time that leave me questioning what the long run is going to look like for them. And I ran on equity. It's not a new word in my language box. It's something that I've kept as at the forefront of every decision that I make. And I have questions. And I've heard from so many folks, regardless of where you are, please make a decision this time. Just give us a decision. Let us go forward one way or another. And so I'm at that point today where I'm not, in terms of what's in front of us, I have too many questions outstanding to approve today. And that's where I'm sitting. But again, it's up to the full commission. I'm one vote, and I get that I'm the guy who represents Chular. I fought for Chular. I've sandbagged Chular, quite literally, not in the other sense. I've been out there on rainy nights with some of the firefighters from Monterey County Regional, sandbagging homes to keep those folks out of harm's way. And this is what I was elected to do, was ask tough questions. And I'm not comfortable with where we are today in terms of supporting this moving forward without knowing that that community has its interests taken care of in terms of this conversation.
This is Mary Ann. Oh, sorry, Kimberly, go ahead.
Through the chair, if I may. Okay.
Please.
So I appreciate your comments, Chair Lopez. I have to say, Eric Tynan's words resonated with me, certainly representing the largest city within the county. I certainly am very well aware that CalAM is not our service area. However, what we are talking about is water, and that the Salinas Valley, the water used in the Salinas Valley, is absolutely part of this discussion. I do have concerns. Like you, Chair Lopez, I have concerns over the $75 million in lost revenue over smaller agencies. I have concerns on the $700 million in the eminent domain process. And like you, I understand, that we are being pressed to make a decision today, and I'm not comfortable moving forward with the staff recommendation. And so just to be very direct about it, I know people have danced around the water subject for decades, quite literally decades. And it's clear to me that the Peninsula needs desal. It's clear to me that the Peninsula doesn't want desal. And so there is quite a bit of discussion over whether or not that water comes from the Salinas Valley. And at that point, bringing it back to this decision today, I'm not prepared to move forward with staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. We'll go to Pete. I see your hand up next. You're muted, Pete. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm a representative of special districts on Lafco, and there are several of them that are pending to, or have the potential to lose a great deal of money. The district I represent personally is the Monterey County Regional Fire District. They are slated to lose $140,000 per year if this goes through. That is a considerable concern to me, as it was expressed by our chief earlier. That represents a firefighter. And there are other special districts and school districts, none of whom have received any kind of guarantee that they're going to be made whole as a part of this. And now it is true that the Water Management District sent us a letter which arrived around 11 a.m. on Friday, last Friday, and we've just now and today gotten it to our attorneys. So perhaps those negotiations could be ongoing, but at this point, there seems to me nothing in stone. We're all taking it on good faith that we'll be made whole. And we can't afford to lose a frontline firefighter as a result of this. So I'm not prepared to move forward on it without guarantees. And so I'd have to vote no if it comes up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Marianne, you're up.
Thank you. I, like Commissioner Poitras, represent the special districts on this commission. And it's, you know, it's a little bit like robbing Peter to pay Paul. You say you're going to save so much money on this district, but meanwhile, all the other districts give it up to save that money. And that money still comes back to the citizens that are within the district. So for me, it's, we had an incomplete application in February. So we've gotten to how many months to get to now? 10 months. And it seems like a lot of these what ifs, maybes, might be, could be, all of these speculative things, maybe someone should have sat down and really dug into them and tried to find solutions. But I don't believe the solutions are there. And I do not believe that in good faith, I can take from one part of my community just to make another part of the community happy. I don't think that that works. I also believe there's, if you look at it long term, there are a whole lot of issues with the feasibility, not only just with the financial, but also with water sources and with how we're going to go forward with this. And it's just, there are too many questions. I would really ask the water district to really take a good look at what it's got and come back with some good answers, but I can't support this tonight.
Thank you, Marianne. Wendy?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to deviate from some of the comments that have been made. I think that our staff has done exceptionally good work, professional work. Our consultants have done fantastic work. We've studied this issue deeply. And I want to recognize that the staff recommendation we have tonight and that has been presented is good. It's a good recommendation from staff. I share the concerns that are being talked about in regards to property tax impacts of moving forward. However, the resolution of those issues is clearly included as a condition of approval. With all due respect to my colleagues who have concerns, the approval process includes clear conditions that must be resolved before Lafco can issue the certificate of completion. The opportunity for our concerns to be addressed is through the conditions of approval. This is a long process. The district needs this this action on our part so that they can move forward to find resolution to the concerns and questions that you're holding today. The conditional approval is necessary so that we can collectively move forward to identify and have community support for viable water solutions. We desperately need additional water supply for affordable housing and for economic development on the Monterey Peninsula. Voting no on this application tonight prevents, it stymies, it is a throwing a wrench in the cog that allows us to move forward towards water solutions. I am here as a representative of the community that we're talking about, and I'm telling you that the people that I talk to, the community that I represent, is committed to moving forward with additional water supply solutions. We're talking about desal, we're talking about a whole range of options that we need to move forward, but it needs to be publicly owned. By stopping this action tonight, you're effectively stopping our progress towards water solutions. I think the board and our staff have done an abundance of due diligence and preparation for this decision. The independent report concludes that there is substantial evidence in the record to support activation of the latent powers, and I believe we need to accept the staff recommendation tonight. And just to be really clear, if we fail to take this action tonight, we will find ourselves in litigation with the Water Management District without any justifiable defense. So I urge my colleagues to think clearly about what are your concerns, what are your questions. Let's get those included in as conditions of approval, and let's move this forward tonight so that the entire peninsula can move forward when it comes to our water discussions.
Thank you, Wendy. We'll go to Matt next.
Good evening. 15 years ago, I was president of AMBAG, and the reason the Peninsula, the Water Management Districts shut down moving forward with the desal 15 years ago was a cumulative look at all the desals that were planned on the Peninsula, which was the most ridiculous thing, taking a look at them cumulatively. But of course, it hasn't even moved forward. And so I think the reason that CalAm has not moved forward with desal is the public. And had they been carte blanche, given authority to move forward on it, I think it would have happened by now. I'm definitely from the private sector, not the public sector. I don't think government can run anything efficiently. And I think we've seen that. So I think keeping it where it's at, I don't think that it's been proven to me. And the what ifs, especially hearing from Chief Urquidez earlier about not knowing what his funding mechanism is on moving forward, just scares the hell out of me. So I would like to put a motion out there right now to not move forward and not move forward with staff's recommendation. So I move that.
I'll second that, Greg.
We've got a motion in a second, but I still have a hand up from Ian. Ian will go ahead and open it up.
Yeah, I think the chair, I won't even start off by saying it's disappointing to hear what my colleagues are saying, because you all have a right to say it, and I'm listening to you clearly. But I think we are judging this on the wrong criteria, and the criteria should be judged on is a special district within Lafco is asking for us to approve a simple application about their latent powers with conditions that if they don't make these conditions, then the latent powers doesn't go forward. And to say that there's concerns about, I won't call out the special district, I won't call out anybody, but any concerns that you have, I think our legal team said some of those things cannot be agreed to officially. So to say we need to have ironclad agreements, signed documents, puts the district in a legal bind. And why would they do that just to seek approval? So I think some of these statements that I'm hearing, I don't know how we solve them. I don't know how you solve them if legally they cannot ironclad agree to the concerns you have. And then secondly, if you're saying don't move forward tonight, why would they continue to have a discussion? They can't even talk to Cal-Am. So let me just read my little statement here, and then we'll move forward. You know, after the water district application was deemed complete, staff has researched, reviewed, debated, draft, and redraft this study. The board has done the same, including a couple of delays for good reasons to evaluate numerous complaints and concerns that I think you guys have rightly. The largest concern being the financial feasibility of activating the district latent powers. As you know, this draft study has done by staff for the board. It's our study. Everything in this study, this document you guys read is ours, is the board's. The study lists substantial evidence in support of a yes vote. It is clear the district can provide and maintain portable water production and distribution service for retail customers per the Konishi-Knock-Hatzberg Act. The study includes findings from additional independent third-party consultant, the Berkshire report. I think we heard it tonight. This review states, in part, the Refellis report provides a reasonable basis for Lafco to determine that the water district proposal will have sufficient revenues throughout uncertainty, although there remain uncertainties. And Mr. Berkson stated that he stands by his report again. Therefore, there's little in this study, our study, to support findings that the district could not provide, maintain portable water production and distribution services for retail customers, which is our test. That's the Lafco test. Providing monies for these special districts is not the test, but you have a right to hold your vote for that. I'm just saying, I don't know how the district actually gives you a certified signature stating that that will happen before you give them approval to move forward. The study should be used today to approve, or it will be used in a court of law in the future. A no vote would only result, in my opinion, as far as the water district is concerned, they almost will be required to file a lawsuit. Lafco cannot sustain a lawsuit where the water district must fight to the end, even to the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, just to be able to negotiate with Cal-Am. Knowing Cal-Am is not for sale. In short, to negotiate with Cal-Am, they must have the court's approval or ours. But to get to Cal-Am, they got to go through us. And I don't think Lafco has the money in our budget to sustain that type of lawsuit. The question is really, is it in Lafco's best interest to place ourselves in front of these two titans? Cal-Am with its money and the water district with its right to eminent domain. In my opinion, using only this comprehensive draft study, a judge or a jury would be very comfortable declaring or deciding in the district's favor that Lafco's boards disregarded the facts as they were set out in front of us in our own draft study. A conditional approval is supported by the district application, staff's review, and the facts in our own study. I believe the only legally defensible position for me is to vote to approve in accordance with the Konishi-Knox-Hatzberg Act. This application meets the approval and the requirements to move forward tonight. Now, I understand it's members that have concerns and questions, and hopefully we can move forward and engage the district to have further discussions. But if it's just a hard, fast rule that it has to be some signed document, then we know where we're going to end up at. And I need to just be on the record. So when we meet again, the board, we can look each other in the eye and we can agree this is why we're here talking about the things we will be talking about in the future. But I definitely respect each one of your points of view. And I know you guys take these things to heart and you're making the best decision that you can for the people that you feel you represent. I'm here as a representative of small cities. And I know when small cities come up, or cities period, come before Lafco and they talk about they want to increase their sphere of influence, it's no different. A simple application, if they meet the application, then we should approve it. getting into the weeds about how much the Cal-Am cost. People talking about $700 million. Where'd that come from? We don't have no proof that Cal-Am cost that much. And so thank you so much, Chair. You've done this well. You led us through this, and I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, Ian. Matt, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify my motion was to reject all of staff's recommendations in the motion.
Thank you, Matt. I see a hand up from alternate Anna Velasquez, Mayor Velasquez, Commissioner Velasquez, all the titles. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for everybody's comments. And I know this has been a long process, and obviously this has been a battle that has been going on for years. So I just want to state my opinion. Although I'm an alternate and I don't have a vote on this, I just want to make it clear in terms of my position, especially representing the South County communities, that I support to move forward with the staff recommendations based on what was provided by staff and all the different studies provided by Mr. Burks. And I know that there's been a lengthy discussion on the different issues that have been discussed in terms of impacts. And I know that we had discussed about providing additional independent studies on the financial feasibility, and the independent study report was provided. And as we heard tonight from Mr. Berkson, that there was no additional information that was provided today that would change his mind in terms of what was his determination in terms of financial feasibility. Also, I agree with some of my other colleagues in regards to that. We have an application before us that has recommendations, and those recommendations are clearly stated that this project, if not feasible, then will not be moving forward. And I think it's really important, especially in terms of some of the water supply solutions that were talked about today, and affordable housing needs. I know for me, and I'll speak on behalf of the South County communities, I know that our South County communities have been developing the majority of the housing that's needed for our county. And there's been issues in terms of the Peninsula developing housing because of the water supply issues. So I think it's about time that we resolve this water supply issue and start looking at how all of the counties, when we talk about equity, all parts of the cities really come to play into this affordable housing for our communities. For me, I'm comfortable with the conditions that were provided by our council in terms of looking at the application, the conditions for approval, and moving forward with that. I also have, will pose a question to our fellow commissioners, is if there is additional information needed, then how do we move forward to gather that information? If there's additional conditional approvals that are required, then how do we move forward to be able to say, these are the conditions that we need before we move forward, and here's what's going to be provided, and that we come back and that there is an opportunity to finally conclude with what the recommendation is going to be. Thank you, Chair. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Anna. We'll go to Kate next. Kate, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lopez. A couple of procedural questions for the commission and suggestions. One is that your staff would appreciate direction on the proposed sphere of influence annexation item. I believe Commissioner Gorley's proposed motion would be to deny that aspect of the district's proposal, as well as denial of the latent powers activation, but I would like clarification on that. And the second point of procedure is if a majority of your commission chooses to recommend denial of this matter, we would be coming back to you with, we would suggest that you include as part of your motion that your staff come back to you at your next special meeting on January 5th with a draft resolution that would document the denial findings and determinations that you're making tonight. And I guess one last point of procedure raised actually by Commissioner Velasquez. If the commission believes that a continuance is warranted in order to tackle some of these outstanding issues and address them potentially as additional conditions of approval, then we would recommend that that item be continued to probably to your next regular meeting, which would be on January 24th. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I do see, before I go back to Matt, I do see a hand up still from Anna, and I want to make sure it's not a new hand.
Sorry, Chair, I forgot to lower my hand. I'll do that now.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go back to you, Matt, on the suggestions from staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, if we could adjust my motion to not include the annexation and to bring back the 1st of January, the resolution for the majority if this if my motion passes.
So clarifying, we're directing staff to come back at the next meeting with the necessary documentation. Is that what I heard, Kate?
Yes, sir. Along with letting the annexation move forward.
Is that clear, Kate?
Yeah, yes, it is. I believe then that the commission would be approving the annexation sphere of influence resolution tonight. That's part of your staff packet, and directing staff to come back on January 5th with a new resolution containing the necessary rationale and written determinations for denial of the latent powers activation.
You good with that, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard a yes there, got cut off a little bit, but does the second stand?
Second stands. Thank you, Craig.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a motion, a second. I did see some new hands, so I'm going to go Mary Ann, and then I think Greg was trying to raise his hand, so we'll go there next.
I have a question actually for one of our attorneys. And how does this impact timing, and how does it impact just the general moving forward?
What do you mean by timing specifically?
Well, we did have a time limit of when we made a decision or not. So are we still within our rights?
Yeah, I believe and you're talking about the latent power item.
Yes.
If we return on the 5th, yes, we'll be fine in that regard. And what was your second question? I'm sorry. Or did it get answered?
No, you're obviously setting, and I haven't heard any comments of what we're doing. So I'm just asking you to weigh in here if we're going down a path we shouldn't.
No, what we're hearing in the motion on the floor is that the annexation resolution would be approved tonight, and then we would come back on January 5th with the appropriate resolution for you to approve, denying the latent power proposal.
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I'm going to go to Greg next. I know he's been having trouble raising his hand, so.
Yes, thank you very much. I would just like the commission to consider Kate's suggestion that we allow her time to work with the district to see if we can resolve some of the issues that you all have brought up, which I happen to share, and then to make sure that we have the legal standing or legal cover so that we can protect us from lawsuit, and check with that. So that would be my concern, is maybe we can delay this and see if Kate can meet with the district and resolve some of the issues that you all have raised.
Thank you, Greg. We appreciate that. I'm going to go back to you, Wendy.
Thank you. I'd like to make a substitute motion to accept the staff recommendation with an additional condition that I'd ask County Council to draft that addresses your concerns, Supervisor Lopez, about the satellite water district issue so that you can get your concerns addressed and we can still move forward.
What was the second?
Yeah, there's a substitute motion and second. Ian, was there additional comments with your hand up?
Yeah, if you could, Chair. I was just trying to get clarification as relates to the original motion. What are the findings we're looking for? Because I didn't hear them, and some of them, as far as I'm concerned, is illegal to be putting down in a document, right? So what are the findings that Matt want us to take? And then if the original motion passed, is the district and the special district or people with concerns, are they still working on those issues, knowing that we're drawing up a document that says we're going to disapprove? So why would they continue to negotiate? So that's, I want our lawyers and Kate to get in between that and figure out where that is at.
Well, I think that's going to take some work, and I will share my comments were based on the environmental justice component of the findings required to be made. I mean, quite clearly there, it states for low-income families and impacts, and that's where I'm coming from. So happy to say I don't think that's very clearly in the Lafco rules and requirements. And so for me, that's one that I can't get around given the impacts to my community at this point. But I'll open it up to either Kate or Kelly if they want to answer that at this point.
No, I understand that, Chair. The ones that you guys are legally on, but we know, if you just indulge me for a minute, my only point is, while we're waiting for our next meeting to go forward or not going forward, is the district able to negotiate those things? That was my real concern.
Kate or Kelly?
Well, with Chair Lopez, members of the commission, with respect to the proposed agreement that Chief Urquidez referenced, it has been received, as he mentioned, by his office. It's under review by his council, has yet to be considered by his board of directors. As to whether or not they would continue to discuss that draft agreement in this next month, I don't know.
I agree. If the commission stands with its decision to deny approval of the latent power and we return in early January, I don't know. That would be up to the district what they want to do as far as those potential agreements.
Okay. So any additional comments, Ian? Just want to make sure we got all your questions answered.
I'm sorry, Chair. Take it down.
Okay, no problem. So at this point, we do have a substitute motion. Again, in terms of process, substitute motion goes first in terms of order of the vote. And so at this point, we will take up and ask Safrina to take us through a roll call vote on the substitute motion. Again, not the initial motion by Matt. It was a substitute motion by Wendy. So with that, Safrina.
And I just want to restate the motion to be very clear for everyone that I'm moving staff recommendation to approve latent powers with the conditions listed and an additional condition that addresses the concerns about satellite water districts.
And I'll start with Commissioner Rutescu.
Aye.
Commissioner Craig.
No.
Commissioner Gorley.
Nay.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Aye.
Commissioner Poitras.
No.
Vice Chair Leffel.
No.
And Chair Lopez.
No, the motion has failed. At this point, we'll take up the original motion from Gorley, from Matt. And so at this point, I'll go ahead and ask Matt to, oh, Wendy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, can you explain could we have County Council or Ms. McKenna explain what the conditions of denial are that we're voting on right now? I'm unclear what the rationale for denial would be.
The conditions are coming back in January, I believe was the amended motion from Matt.
Well, what are those conditions that are coming back in January?
If anything, I would recommend that you continue the item to January 5th, in which time staff can work on a resolution that can be put before the commission, given the comments made tonight in support of the denial of the latent power item.
Matt, that's in your direction, given your active motion on the floor.
We have an item that's been put before the commission this evening, and the item is put before us to vote on, yay or nay. I'm choosing to vote nay on staff's recommendation, not including the annexation, and the new resolution that puts in forth my motion will be brought back before us the first part of January. That's just going to clarify what the motion is that we're voting on this evening.
You're correct, and I misspoke when I spoke up. If there's any additional comments by commissioners that you want included in the resolution, you can certainly vote no tonight, and we will include your comments as support in the resolution. Alternatively, you could vote tonight to continue the item to January 5th, whereby staff could put together a resolution for your approval, following the general direction tonight. Either would work. It's up to the commission how you want to proceed.
Okay, so Matt's clarified his motion one more time. Can I get Kimberly to confirm that the second stands?
I'll go ahead and confirm the second.
Thank you. So now I'm going to go to Pete. Pete, I see your hand up before I call the vote.
I'm not sure about the procedure here. If we vote, oh, hope I didn't lose this thing. Am I still there?
Yes.
You're still on.
Okay. My computer fell over a little bit. If we vote on Matt's motion, either yes or no, then it's done, yes or no, or it's coming back for another decision. I'm not sure I get that, so please clarify.
Kelly, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I believe the motion on the floor is to vote no on the latent power proposal, and staff will return on January 5th with the resolution summarizing, memorializing the findings you made this evening.
All right, just want to be sure about that.
And then the other piece is the approval of the sphere of influence annexation, the conditional approval as laid out in the draft resolution before you this evening.
Any other questions, Pete?
No, I'll lower my
Okay.
hand. Thank you.
Ian?
Yeah, I'll go quick, Chair. That was my point. What happens if the entities continue to negotiate and they resolve some of these impasses? We'll come to a meeting and we only have one resolution that says no. Then we have to start again. So I would like for, Chair, for you to think about the possibility of some of these impasses being resolved, and we may be able to vote on the latent powers in an affirmative manner. So is that two resolutions? I should take a look at that, Chair.
I understand, and I think nothing is precluding anybody from having conversations and continuing negotiations. And if over that period, if the ground, what the elements look like on the ground changes and it comes back with some solutions, maybe we end up somewhere else. But at this point, on voting tonight, no on the proposal that was put before us in terms of the recommendations is what I've heard in the motion. I don't, in terms of that question of can people still talk and bring back something, that door's open until we have that final vote on the resolution in my mind. So I think
Through the chair, I'd like to call the question.
Absolutely.
Second.
All right, at this point, Safarina, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to take us through a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Rutescu,
No.
Commissioner Craig,
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby,
I know.
Commissioner Poitras,
Yes.
Vice Chair Leffel,
Yes.
Chair Lopez.
Yes. Motion carries. With that, we've concluded this item. I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my agenda and take us into an additional report from Kate. Kate, I believe there was an item to report out on.
Yes, thanks, Chair Lopez. Agenda item number 15 provides an informational update for our commission concerning the proposed possible formation of a new healthcare district in southern Santa Cruz County and potentially northern Monterey County. This has to do with the Watsonville Community Hospital that is privately owned and is going through some legal proceedings right now. County of Santa Cruz and some of our state representatives are taking the lead in looking at potential alternatives moving forward that would provide for public ownership of that asset. So we will keep you informed of that effort as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? I see a hand up from Ian.
No, I
Chris is-
apologize. I think it comes up automatically or something.
Okay, all right.
Chris-
Seeing no
Chris, it's-
commissioner hands, I'm going to go to the.
Chris?
Oh, yeah, is that
It's-
you,
it's-
Steve?
Yeah, I'm on
Okay.
iPhone, whatever.
Go for it.
My only comment on this healthcare district is that North Monterey County pretty much gets its healthcare from the Watsonville Hospital. And whatever comes out of this in terms of if it's a public healthcare district, we definitely need to make sure that we have representation on there, because the majority of the kids that go to the school in the Pajaro Valley Unified School District, of which we have 4 schools that are in that district, get their health care in Watsonville, and we need to make sure we have a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We'll open it up, see if there's any public comment on this report, the communication on possible formation of a Pajaro Valley Healthcare District. Seeing no hands up, we'll close public comment, bring it back. Any commissioner comments? It's been a long evening, but anybody still out there want to make some comments? All right, seeing no hands up. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll share one comment, and on a good note tonight, we are gonna have an event down in King City on the 17th. That's a Friday night. We'll be flying Santa in a helicopter. So we borrowed that from Carmel Valley, how they used to do Santa's flying. We'll be doing the same. If anybody wants to volunteer to help us fill some trunks for some McKinney-Vento definition homeless families in King City, please come out. There's a sign-up sheet. You can find it on lots of social media sites, including my Facebook page. We're going to be putting out toys for over almost 1,000 kids, as well as pozole boxes for the holidays for about 400 to 500 families. So welcome you out to join us that evening. And with that, we are adjourned to our next
Sure.
meeting.
Sorry, I needed to report out on closed
Oh,
session.
my apologies, Kelly. You're right. The floor is yours.
No problem. There are no reportable items from closed session tonight.
Great. My apologies for
You
cutting
just
you off.
state that
Thanks,
for the
everybody.
record, that's all.
Yeah. All right. We are adjourned. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Happy holidays.